fans alone. So here are some of the most memorable Ashes housery moments. Few figures in Ashes history were despised by the opposition more than Douglas Jardine. He was the granite-jawed architect of the notorious 1932 Bodyline series, which sent shockwaves through the sport that still reverberate nearly a century later. One day, the hurricane met the tornado as Jardine met Yabba. As the name suggests, Yabba, real name Stephen Harold Gascoigne, was a heckler who became so famous that a statue was made of him. When Jardine was on the boundary swatting away some flies, Yabba yelled the immortal line, "Jardine, leave our flies alone. They're the only friends you've got here." Like Jardine before him, Stuart Broad is another figure who had a particular gift for riling the Aussie public, mainly due to his jaw-dropping survival at Trent Bridge in 2013, when he very visibly nicked off to slip and refused to walk. Broad is somewhat the modern housery king. He officially became a sorcerer in 2023 when his random bail swaps twice bought a wicket with the next ball at the Oval. 3 tests earlier, after that Carey Bairstow run-out, Broad made sure he was right in the thick of the pantomime. Wicketkeeper Ian Healy issued one of the great lines towards Nasser Hussain. When Steve Waugh told Ricky Ponting to field right under Hussain's nose, Healy remarked, "That could be anywhere within a 3-mile radius." Poor Nass. But perhaps the most poetic of sledges came from bowler of lightning bolts Dennis Lillee, about the Yorkshireman of Yorkshiremen, Geoffrey Boycott, about whom Lillee wrote this: "He's the only fellow I've met who fell in love with himself at a young age and has remained faithful ever since." Priceless.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. I'm Kevin Hatchard, stepping in for Danny tonight. And who needs AI when you've got AB, the European football supercomputer that is Andy Brassel, will be bringing us bang up to date with the twists and turns across the continent. There are plenty of those to dig into across the next 3 hours. Tim Vickery will join us as always to give the latest from South America. And we could have been kind to Daniele Fisichella and left him alone, but we've decided to bring him onto the world's biggest sports radio station to grill him on why his beloved Italy have missed yet another World Cup. We're going to look ahead to the quarterfinals of all 3 major European competitions, with English teams still in all of them. The Trans-Europe Express has left the station, and you're all very welcome. Trans-Europe Express. Trans-Europe Express. Andy, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. You, Kev?
Very good, very good. Plenty to dig into this week. International football is over, and the club game has recommenced. And we've got some games going on at the moment. Inter are wiping the floor with Roma at the moment. They've just scored 2 goals in quick succession. Lautaro Martinez has a couple of goals in that one. The king of Swaz, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, scored a brilliant goal from long range. And Monaco up against Marseille, Andy.
Yeah, whereas still 0-0 approaching the hour mark. I'm wondering if Marcus Thuram, who just scored, could have been a reasonable Frenchman and lent his goal to the Ligue 1 game, but no, still a blank score sheet there. Maybe partly because no Mason Greenwood this evening, so it looked like Ethan Nwaneri would start for Marseille. They've chosen not to start him, and they're starting Hamid Junior Traore, of course, who's on loan there as well. So a little bit of a surprise. Monaco having the best of it, few good penalty shouts, but an increasingly tight race for Europe and for the Champions League places at the top of Ligue is still on a knife edge.
Only one place to start. That's the end of Italy's World Cup dream on Tuesday. They lost on penalties to Bosnia-Herzegovina after a 1-1 draw in Zenica. It's the third World Cup in a row that Italy have failed to qualify for. Italian journalist and Trans-Europe Express family member Daniele Fisichella joins us to go over it. Daniele, what's been the reaction to such a dreadful disappointment?
Good evening. Well, the reaction, of course, has been a huge disappointment. And this time around, the third time around, I think people were not expecting Italy not to qualify, perhaps because most of us, we were already scarred after 2017, after 2022. And we thought that ultimately the hurdle was not that big for the Azzurri. But unfortunately, that's not been the case. So, yeah. As always in Italy, after the disaster, it's time for the inquest, it's time for the trial. And the reaction has been tear everything down, change everything from the top, and bring everything down to change the Italian football. So unfortunately, it's not that quick, of course, as we know. But yeah, this has been the reaction that then has led to the resignation of the Italian FA chairman Gabriele Gravina, to the resignation of the coach Gennaro Gattuso, as well as Gianluigi Buffon, the head of delegation. So the few heads have started to roll, but probably this process is going to take much longer. It won't be a quick fix, of course.
Daniele, because you are a member of the family, I'm going to help you out here and slightly sidetrack us, if you don't want to talk about this for the 58th time this week, to say there has been a goal in the south of France. Monaco 1, Marseille 0, right on the hour, cross from the right by Jordan Teze, put in by Alexander Golovin to give Monaco the lead, which really tightens it up. Although there is a VAR check going on at the moment, as is obligatory in big games like this. Look, I wanted to ask you, off the back of this, we're watching on this enormous screen at the moment, Inter 4, Roma 1, wish you were here, etc. It kind of feels to me from a distance, Daniele, that even though we've got club football back this weekend, and normally the feeling amongst fans is, isn't it great to have club football back, especially at this point in the season? It's felt to me as if Italian football's not ready for it after what happened earlier in the week. Is that fair to say?
Well, I think the fixtures this weekend have felt a little bit flat at the moment. Also because it's the Easter Sunday in Italy, and probably normally games are not played on Easter Sunday in Italy. There's still a bit of a tradition holding on, but not is the case. So I would imagine, yes, you're right. The majority of people who went to the stadium, although if tonight San Siro is packed, is a big game for both Inter and Roma. But yeah, but the disappointment has been that big. The going back into a Scudetto race, which is lively, of course, as it's been in the last few years. Perhaps people don't feel quite ready. The feeling is, of course, another summer looming of just basically sitting and watching the other teams playing. And, the World Cup, unfortunately, is such a collective experience that transcends football. It's families coming together, it's friends sitting on the floor and watching the game with a pizza in front of you, which unfortunately for lots of people is not going to be the case. So that is really the feeling. So I think, yeah, what is going to happen this weekend and the next one probably still going to feel a little bit deflated, a little bit flat around the stadium in Serie A.
You can still have pizza, but no World Cup to go with it, unfortunately.
Yes, but without game.
Daniele, there's going to be a lot of talk about who the next coach is going to be. Antonio Conte has been linked with another spell in the role. Max Allegri seems to have distanced himself from it. There's talk of Roberto Mancini going back. Of course, he left in, under a cloud, really, despite winning the Euros. What's the feeling about who they might go for?
The two names you mentioned, Conte and Mancini, are probably the front runners at the moment because although Conte is not available, they could be made available comes the summer. And Mancini, after leaving Italy, hasn't had a great experience around the world as a manager. But it would feel probably a going back to the future, if you like, when you have a coach like Mancini who left in a polemic way that almost Italy felt abandoned by him in the midst of a Euro 2025 qualifiers, and Conte, of course, renowned for having done so well with perhaps a less Italian talent, a less talented Italian side at Euro 2016, but it took the national team to better results overall of quarterfinals. It would feel like a pair safe of hand, but I think there will always be some clash with the ideas that things need to change and you need a new person, a new name, somebody that is considered more at the front foot of what comes in terms of innovations. But are there any Italian managers that can be considered innovative? Well, one just landed in North London, but I believe he might not be available. It depends what happens. Of course, I'm talking about Roberto De Zerbi. I think what the Italian FA has done again is been caught cold. They have been reactive rather than proactive. When Luciano Spalletti project didn't land with the player after Euro 2024, they should have invested on a manager of the likes of Simone Inzaghi or perhaps even Carlo Ancelotti, who became available last summer, but they didn't. And in the end, it was a panic button. The spirit of Berlin 2006, hiring Gattuso and hoping that that the past glories and the passion would carry Italy to the US, Mexico, and Canada, and in the end it wasn't. So again, it will be chosen in June anyway after the election of the new head of the FA, which in itself is a long and convoluted process. So at the moment, yes, it's all up in the air.
Well, I think Inter fans like football again anyway, because they're 5-1 up now. Goal by Barella. He tried to play in Turan. The ball came back to him off Gilardi and he put it in. So 5-1, Inter making their biggest statement in a number of weeks, I guess. I'm just going to float the possibility, because things are going a little bit wrong at Roma. They're looking pretty dispirited. Still 25 minutes to go in that Gasperini goes and maybe Ranieri steps in to see them through the end of the season.
Not again.
Of course, as Daniele, they wanted him instead of Gattuso originally, didn't they? Now, it feels to me, and especially when we talk about Mancini leaving, that Gravina was a huge block on the type of coaches they could get, because he stayed through them not getting to one World Cup, and that was quite a controversial thing. He initially said after the Bosnia game he wouldn't go, but now the FIGC, the Italian FA, is looking for a new president, as you say. I mean, will this open up the sort of type of coaches they're likely to be able to get?
It depends on who the new president is, and at the moment the names are 75 years old Giancarlo Abete and Malagò, who's been also the president of the Olympic Committee in the past. So we're looking at men of a certain age, if you like. However, there have been talks of former players, the like of Demetrio Albertini, Alessandro Costa Curta, perhaps even Paolo Maldini, joining in almost like a right-hand man, because in the Italian FA there is a desperate need of people who have played the game at the highest level, which at the moment are not present anymore. If you look at the Italian FA hierarchy overall, it's a very old structure. Italy is an old country, okay? But the Italian FA, it's even older. The average age, it's older than the Italian Senate at the moment. It's over 60 years.
People are very aware of that, aren't they, Daniele? I mean, a lot of people have mentioned the Baggio report this week, haven't they?
Yes. The Baggio report, the famous 900 pages that Baggio put together 7 or 8 years ago, where he suggested how to train the trainers and how to put technique and skills at the centerpiece of how football must be taught in schools and must be taught in academies. It has a report that has gone unread, 900 pages. I mean, in a country where readerships overall is very down, I doubt anybody would have opened that report, but certainly have not acted on it. But going back to the Italian FA, an old organization with you cannot find anybody under the age of 50 apart from Giorgio Chiellini and Sara Gama, the former captain of the women's team. Only three women there. So again, it's old men deciding for a sport played from young people. So it needs really a change. But going back to the way football must be taught and talents must be nurtured. Yeah, it's more about trying to go back to the football schools and putting techniques at the centerpiece, which of course Italian side haven't done so far, and allowing Italian talents, first of all, to flourish, but second, to play in Serie A, because that's really the bottleneck. That's really where it stops. Italy under 21s and under 19s are good and competitive. The players simply they're not given enough minutes when it comes to the top flight.
I wonder if the headline of that Baggio report was simply "More ponytails needed in Italian football." Daniele, always great to have you on the show. Daniele Fisichella there, Italian journalist and member of the Trans-Europe Express family. He's written actually a great article, which is well worth checking out on his social media about what needs to happen with Italian football. Inter 5-1 up against Roma. Just quickly, Andy, there's a lot of talk about youth development and whether they're lagging behind Spain and Germany. There are some good kids coming through with Italian football, but is there a lack there for you?
I guess it's the will to pick them, isn't it? That's the main thing. I mean, we'll come on to that in the Italy section later, a few who might have arrived, but a few people have pointed out to me in recent weeks. You look at someone like Luca Reggiani, for example, 18-year-old who's just been playing for Dortmund at centre-back, who's just signed a contract extension at Dortmund. Now, of course, Juventus are trying to get younger. They're working on this next-gen project to bring younger and younger players through. Milan are kind of working on that as well. But really, to change those attitudes and to change that outlook, to change that plan, takes generations. And of course, people don't have the patience for that, especially when you haven't qualified for 3 World Cups in a row.
Yeah, it is a grim picture at the moment. Plenty more to come after the break. We're going to be talking Bundesliga on Trans-Europe Express.
Thomas Tuchel's thrown Foden's World Cup hopes into doubt with some comments that he made to the media. Gabby, here's an interesting one. He was excellent in camp, but he struggles to show it on the pitch. He was so good in training, and I thought he will just surprise us. But yeah, he struggles to have the full impact. It was put to Tuchel that he could not take a struggling player to the World Cup. I can, he replied, but the question would be if we will. It's not a guarantee that he will come. Now, to be fair to Phil Foden, I think there's only about 5 or 6, well, maybe 5 or 6, but there'll be more, about a dozen guarantees.
Yeah.
But there'll be about maybe 6, 7, 8 that aren't guarantees. And I think Phil Foden has now come into that category, Gab. I mean, we've got to be concerned for him, don't you agree?
I think the problem for me, Ali, is that his form for Manchester City has been incredibly bad for Phil Foden. You know, he come on in the 90th minute, Ali, in the cup final against Arsenal. Got 0 minutes in both games against Real Madrid.
I know, mate.
In his last 11 games, Ali, he's only played a total of 183 minutes out of 990 available minutes. 0 goals this year. We're already in April, Ali.
Yeah.
And even for his country, Ali, he's not performed. He's only got 4 goals in 49 England caps. He should be at his peak now at 25. Never done it in an England shirt. And those comments from Thomas Tuchel, I look at them and I say,
You are listening to Trans-Europe Express on TalkSport with Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassel. There has been a goal for Roma at San Siro. It's now into 5. Roma 2. Lorenzo Pellegrini has pulled a goal back for Roma, but this has been quite the thrashing. We'll talk about that.
One in France as well.
Go on.
Just this second. Monaco 2, Marseille 0. Folarin Balogun, who has been red hot of recent times. Arsenal fans, he's just got his first of the game and continuing his good run, taking the ball in his stride, finishing to the right of Geronimo Rui, and that makes it really tight. If this result holds, you will have 3 points between 3rd and 7th place in France. That's what I call a Champions League race.
It's good. We'll go into that in a bit more detail later on, but it is incredible how Monaco have bounced back, because at one stage under Pocognoli, they looked as though they were sinking without trace. Something even more important, I've just noticed on this screen, how much taller you are than me. We're going to have to change this on the screen. It's extraordinary mismatch.
I'm reaching around for the lever on the chair.
It's like Nikola Jokic has kind of blundered into the studio. But there we go. We're going to move on to the Bundesliga. I did petition to have 3 hours of Bundesliga, but I was cruelly rejected.
Who's going to stop you?
Well, exactly. Bayern bluster back is our headline. An extraordinary game at the weekend, Andy, with Bayern Munich, the leaders, because they were 2-0 down late on at Freiburg, and they found a way to turn it around.
No Harry Kane as well. And not only no Harry Kane, no Nicholas Jackson. I mean, it's typical, I suppose, with Nicholas Jackson's luck/demeanour that he would be suspended when he gets the rare opportunity to replace the England captain. So Serge Gnabry, the revived Serge Gnabry, played up front instead.
He's been so good this season, by the way.
But
good.
It's a comeback that you couldn't have predicted at all, is it? I mean, what do you think it is? You watch a heck of a lot of Bayern. What do you think it is?
I think it's a little bit like what happened with Leon Goretzka, in the sense that if you look at not the summer just gone, but the one before, the indication had been that Goretzka's time at Bayern was over.
Yes.
And Uli Hoeneß, who is the honorary president, but what he says goes still, he had said, look, it's probably time for him to find a new club. Goretzka dug in and said, well, I'm not going anywhere, and ended up playing more games than he didn't in that season. With Gnabry, lots of talk he was going to go in the summer. Luis Diaz had come in. Competition for places had got fiercer. I think he's just, straightened the headband, got himself ready, and he's played as well as I've seen him play for years. I think he's been phenomenal. Yeah,
he's been fantastic, hasn't he? I mean, it's funny you mentioned Leon Goretzka and the fact that, well, of course, he is going to go in the summer on a free transfer, speculation linking him with the Premier League. But he and Joshua Kimmich were thought to be the heart and soul of Bayern for the duration at some point. In fact, Joshua Kimmich kind of initiated this comeback, didn't he? Because he went to his junior midfield colleague, Tom Bischoff. Why don't you have some shots? And it turns out his word has got weight, because Tom Bischoff did have 2 shots. There ended up being 2 goals, 2 brilliant shots from outside the area, one with either foot. And Bischoff has been quietly impressive this season. And then that sort of built momentum for, I think Bayern were 2-1 down in the 92nd minute, of course, quite a reasonable chunk of stoppage time. Bischoff gets the equaliser, and then right at the end, Lennart Karl, after a beautiful, beautiful move with Alphonso Davies' cross and Karl tapping it in, gets the winner.
100 goals they've got now in the Bundesliga.
Unreal. Absolutely unreal. But it's not been in doubt for ages and ages and ages.
They're going to break a record that has stood since 1972.
But will Harry Kane break the record? I think he's not going to play enough to break Lewandowski's record. What do you think?
Well, Kane's on 31 at the moment. He's got 6 match days left. Yeah. Lewandowski set the record at 41.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I don't think Vincent Kompany is going to play Kane enough for him to have a chance of breaking that record. But I can see him doing it next season. He is part of an attack that is absolutely phenomenal at the moment, probably the best in Europe. We'll talk about Bayern a bit more later in the show. I want to talk about Dortmund, Andy, because they won a truly awful game, 2-0 at Stuttgart. Nothing really happened until stoppage time, when they scored 2 phenomenal goals, actually, Karim Adeyemi and then Julian Brandt.
2 players who probably won't be there next season.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we know Brandt's going to go, don't we? Because his contract's up, and Adeyemi has been linked with a move to the Premier League, actually, for quite some time. But what's really interesting is not the game itself, Andy, but what happened afterwards when Nico Schlotterbeck was asked about his contract.
Yeah, that's right. So we thought at this point last week, actually. I think we spoke about it on this show, that Schlotterbeck had agreed a new deal to stay at Dortmund. Of course, he's out of contract in 2027. They have very much offered him the bag in US sports parlance, something like 14 million euros a year, plus a buyout clause of 60 million euros, which would come into effect a year later, which I think would be very attractive for clubs all over the continent who are looking for centre-backs. And let's face it, Real Madrid probably need 2 or 3 for next season. And then Schlotterbeck came out after Germany's friendly against Ghana and said, oh, no, it's premature. I haven't said anything. And then, of course, Lars Ricken, who's in charge at Dortmund these days, felt he had to come out and say something before the Stuttgart game. And there's a 100% relationship of trust between us. And then Schlotterbeck came in and just squirming, doing this sort of little back pedal. Yeah, we're having good talks, but we're just not there yet. But we might be soon. And it's like, if he's trying to do what LeBron James did with the decision, he's doing it very, very badly.
Yes. Not as badly as Griezmann with his version of the decision. If you haven't seen that, it's well worth checking out if you go back a few years in the archives. I think there's too many voices at Dortmund. And I know Sebastian Kehl, the sporting director, has just gone and he's been linked with Tottenham.
It's mini Bayern.
Yeah, because you've got Matthias Sammer. Nobody really knows what he does. Minister without portfolio. You've got Ricken. You've got Book, who's just gone in there as the new sporting director. I think it is all...
And inherited this mess.
Yes.
Really.
Talking of messes, that takes us beautifully onto Wolfsburg, who are spiralling towards the drop despite their big Volkswagen-aided budget. And they lost an extraordinary 9-goal thriller at Leverkusen.
Yeah, so they've matched the record previously set by Dieter Hecking's side in 2014, where they've conceded in 20 consecutive matches. Current coach also heard D. Hecking.
I mean, there's a round of applause.
Yeah, that's very impressive. Can't believe he hasn't got on to Star of the Week. But they looked as if they'd got themselves in a good position, of course, in the bottom 2, which are the automatic relegation places, third from bottom plays third from top in Bundesliga 5 at the end of the season in a 2-legged game to decide promotion relegation. So they're looking increasingly marooned, but they were 3-1 up in El Plastico, as they traditionally call it. And
these are the 2 works teams, right? Wolfsburg, the Volkswagen team, Leverkusen, the Bayer team.
Yes, exactly. And that is one of the reasons that, as you said, Wolfsburg have got the 5th highest budget in the division, but second bottom with the 5th highest budget in the division. Bear in mind, Christian Eriksen, who they didn't really need, but presumably paying quite a lot of money, scoring their 3rd goal to put them 3-1 up just before half-time. And then Leverkusen, who are looking very, very wobbly, and whose coach, Kasper Hjulmand, might have been under immediate threat had they lost this game, score 5 unanswered goals to win 6-3. Now, Wolfsburg having quibbles with a few refereeing decisions, but look, the referee doesn't make you concede 6 goals, does he?
No, absolutely. And they were arguing with themselves. David Batty style. It was all very unedifying. Leverkusen are part of a really quite fascinating race for these Champions League spots, because Germany's certainly not guaranteed to get the extra performance spot, so it could be only the top 4 that gets a Champions League spot. Stuttgart have lost to Dortmund this weekend. Leverkusen won. Leipzig won at Werder Bremen. It's going to be really, really tight in the final few weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting mix this weekend of games between teams that are going for the Champions League and battling against relegation. So you had Leipzig, who kind of grew into that game against Werder Bremen. I thought Werder Bremen were better than they've been in weeks early on, even though Daniel Thun, their coach, all he seems to do is just look worried. I don't really know what he does apart from
yeah,
that.
He does do a really good line in that, actually. He looked really worried from the moment he arrived, and it hasn't really changed. The only time they beat Heidenheim in a game and he smiled, and it was very jarring. I commentated on that game. It was very odd to see.
Yeah, that's right. And now I guess on the other end of it, Hoffenheim are starting to look a bit worried, because they look nailed for top 3, let alone top 4, and had a bad little run of late. Mainz, another team battling to avoid the drop, went and won there yesterday with a couple of goals from Philipp Tietz, who hadn't scored for his first 8 games since arriving, and it's kind of an honest striker, I think is fair to say.
Yes, makes the most out of the quality he has. Let's just give it that.
Yeah, you're his agent there, aren't
you?
Yeah. So it means it's really tight at the bottom and really tight in those Champions League places. So despite having that dreadful start to the game against Wolfsburg, it's actually been a really good weekend for Leverkusen, with Stuttgart losing, with Hoffenheim losing. They're right back in the mix because they're desperate to make that top four, and that's become very clear over these last couple of months.
You see, we don't need a title race in the Bundesliga. We don't need that. We know Bayern are going to win it. All the interesting stuff happens below Bayern. Andy, who's your star of the week for the Bundesliga?
My star of the week is Jakub Kaminski. Because Köln, with new coach Rene Wagner, went to Eintracht Frankfurt, played pretty well, I thought, then conceded a goal, conceded another one in quick succession, and you thought, here we go. But no sooner had Arno Kalimuendo, of course, on loan from Nottingham Forest, scored the really good second goal for Eintracht Frankfurt, that Kaminski, who's been, I think, the best player really at Köln this season, got second and made it clear that he's celebrating a new addition to his family. I don't know if that's etiquette when you've only just pulled one back to do a celebration, but he clearly didn't fancy himself to score a second goal.
Yeah, there's a lack of self-confidence there. I better make the most of this while I can. Talking of people who don't back themselves to score, my star of the week is Marlon Busch, who plays for Heidenheim. They're the bottom team in the Bundesliga. He scored, and it was a cracker as well, in a 2-2 draw at Borussia Mönchengladbach at the weekend. The goal was his second career goal in the Bundesliga. It came 12 years after his first, the second biggest gap between goals in Bundesliga history. So well done to Marlon Busch. 12 years he had to wait for that one. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk Liga.
All right, Cundy.
Hello, matey.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
How you feeling?
I'm all right. I'm okay, yeah.
Gone well?
Yes, so for those that don't know, the hair transplant last Thursday.
Yep.
A couple of days off.
Yeah.
Back in today.
You're looking well, mate. You look well.
So far.
You look hard.
Well, well, the head's been shaved, right? So there's always got the image, haven't you? Like I'm a bit of a thug.
Yeah, you look like you're going to be on like Football Factory or something.
Yeah. But look, it went well. It's such a weird process. I mean, you're in the chair for about 8.5 hours. It's all done.
I mean, that's hell for you, right? You can't.
Oh, mate. Well, they gave me. I fell asleep halfway through it. They gave me sedatives. Yes, I struggle to sit still, mate. But
struggle.
I struggle to sit.
Impossible.
Still. Yes, but they're sedatives, mate. They work their magic. But here we go. So the beginning.
Mate, I like it.
Well, we'll see.
It's the new Cundy.
The new version.
The new version of.
New improved. Don't know about that.
It looks all right, mate. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, well, look, big shout out to the Wimpole Clinic. Thank you very much for what they did. And we'll see the results, mate, over the next coming 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
You've got to have a haircut, mate. What's the haircut look? What's the trim? You
Don't know.
Quiff?
Don't know what I'm going to go for, mate.
You look all right with the old skin.
Yes, I'm not having a hair transplant and then looking like this.
No?
I'm not. No, you don't have a hair transplant and shave your head.
It's all right, though.
Well, for the time being, I've got no choice. Yeah. I've got no choice. This is how it's going to be.
You are listening to Trans-Europe Express on TalkSport with Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassel. Inter are still leading Roma by 5-2. It's in the 88th minute, that one. It could be a big step towards the Scudetto for Inter. And what's happening in Liga, Andy?
Big ending, a couple of minutes left of normal time in the derby in the south. Monaco 2, Marseille 1 now. Amin Gouiri has just pulled one back. One Premier League player off, one Premier League player on. Højbjerg off, Emerson on.
Højbjerg linked with a return to Spurs, of course, now that De Zerbi has made the move to North London. Interesting to see if that happens.
Marseille's highest earner, it was revealed in L'Equipe this week.
Oh, yeah, they brought out all the salaries, didn't they?
Yeah, I love that. I love that almost as much as I love the stream of clubs' denials of those salaries in the hours that follow.
It's the pure gossip element. That's the thing that really appeals. Oh, he earns more than him. It's great stuff. Should just mention our poll, by the way. Our poll this week, who is Italy's best player? The four that we've given you, Gianluigi Donnarumma, Sandro Tonali, Alessandro Bastoni, or Nicolo Barella. Arsenal fans furious, I imagine, already that Riccardo Calafiori hasn't made that list. If you want to get in touch with us on our various social media channels or text. The number is 81089. So 81089 if you want to get in touch via the text and contribute to the poll. Right.
Who are you taking out of those?
I am a big Bastoni fan, despite the fact he got himself sent off against Bosnia. It's not very fashionable to be a Bastoni fan at the moment because he's probably not played that well.
Unless you're the fan of a Premier League club who's rebuilding and you're thinking, welcome to my club.
Could be that, maybe. Maybe. Liverpool, maybe. Having a little look at him. Who knows? Liga. Was that the weekend they won it? And he's been a big change in the Liga title race.
Yeah, there has, because it's only a 4-point lead at the top for PSG ahead of Lens. But with them beating Toulouse 3-1 on Friday night, just to annoy Liverpool fans a little bit further, Lens lost the North Derby 3-0 at Lille yesterday, which we'll talk about in a second. But with PSG having a game in hand from one of those previously postponed games against Nantes, Nantes are terrible and second bottom, and came within a whisker of losing to bottom side Metz today, you would pretty much assume that's 7-point lead. And that makes it even more sad in terms of the movement of the fixture that we were talking about, the potentially league title deciding one that was going to be next weekend between Lens and PSG, which is going to be played at the Bollard, Lens place. I can't help but feel that played into the results a little bit. Look, PSG were excellent in patches against Toulouse. Well, their front players were anyway.
Yes.
But I do think the way that Lens played, it's the flattest I've seen them all season. Now, Florian Thauvin, who of course had that weird short little spell at Lille. That's right, even shorter than the spell that he was at Newcastle for. He was a player of Lens for... Well, he sort of belongs to them for about 55 days. If we go back to when he left Bastia, he signed for Lille, and then he said he would go there at the end of the next half season. So he played the last half season like on loan at Bastia still. And then in the meantime, it became known to him through intermediaries that Marseille wanted to sign him instead. So he turned up to training 4 times and then said, "Yeah, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to come in until he."
What a lovely modern football fairy tale that.
I know he was doing it before anyone else was, and so as you can imagine, Lille fans, as they were hammering Lens flat, and you think of Thauvin as one of the feel-good stories of the season. Well, Lille fans don't feel like that, and as they beat Lens more and more and more, 3-0 in the end, with Olivier Giroud on the bench, of course, Matheus Fernandes-Pardo, their starting striker, goal and an assist for him as well. He's
been looking really sharp, hasn't he? The last
I think he's one of the biggies that's going to get pinched this summer. I think very, very mobile striker, of course, rested from the starting lineup for that Europa League game against Aston Villa. And it's worked because Lille are right back in the European mix. They've beaten Rennes, they've beaten Marseille away recently, and now Lens. And so it's a bit of a shame for the neutral because it's taken something away from the title race. But Lille are absolutely firing at the moment, and Florian Thauvin is just glad it's all over with.
It was interesting, Pierre Sage, the Lens coach, I think he's been quite bullish at times, hasn't he, about the title race, but he was quite somber afterwards, said they'd been beaten in every battle, including the coaching one.
It's fair to say they're absolutely played off the pitch in that game. And I guess we've come to expect so much from Lens. Really, the team who, as they've pointed out in those many statements about the rescheduling of the PSG game, they've got the 10th budget in Ligue. So what they've been able to do this season is absolutely incredible. But I guess that goes back to what we were talking about PSG against Toulouse. You know, the Ousmane Dembélé opener in that, absolutely fantastic, and really underlines that extra bit of quality that means they don't really have to play well in games. You know, they can just pull out moments like that and away they go.
You mentioned the attacking players for PSG sparkled, like Dembele. It was a very Dembele goal, wasn't it? Even the kind of loose way that he hit it on the edge of the area. But Safonov, the goalkeeper, had a nightmare in the build-up to the goal they conceded and with the actual goal itself.
Yeah, so he came to head away a long ball, completely missed it, and one of his defenders bailed him out and put it out for a corner. You think, oh, deep breath, won't do that again. So he makes a mess of the corner, and then from that, Toulouse equalise, and PSG have to turn it up to get themselves back in front, winning 3-1 in the end. I can't help feeling that they're kind of left with two goalkeepers they're not convinced with. A little bit like Newcastle, you could argue, with Nick Pope and Aaron Ramsdale. You know, two keepers who everyone knows is not the long-term solution for them. So Lucas Chevalier cost a lot of money, and you've got to believe he'll develop into something more. But the feeling is around him, and certainly in the France setup, where he should still go as third choice goalkeeper to the World Cup, but he might not, because there's a feeling that he's taken it quite badly since Safonov has taken his place. And I guess moments like Friday night can underline why, really.
Wasn't he always on a hiding to nothing to a certain extent, Chevalier? Because Luis Enrique made such a fuss about, we want a different profile of goalkeeper, so they decided to get rid of Donnarumma. Now, whether you believe that was the reason for that, or whether it was financial, about contractual, depends which way you go with it. But Chevalier was always going to have to be the guy after the guy. And that is difficult, isn't it? Yeah, really difficult. Coming off a season where they've won the Champions League and Donnarumma is the best goalkeeper in the world at that point. It's good luck. Really hard. In you go. But I guess on the other hand, it's a weird one for Safonov, isn't it? Because, he is a guy who's gone in there immediately. People are, why have PSG bought a player off a Russian club? And then he's billed as this guy, he's not as good a goalkeeper as Donnarumma in terms of saves, but he's better with his feet. He's not. No. If you've seen him, I wouldn't want either of them on my five-a-side team, to be perfectly honest. Maybe Gigi if he wants to go in nets, but Safonov definitely not. Ironically, of course, one of the low-key dramas of the PSG season has been the fact that it's the first time a major European club that you've had a Russian and a Ukrainian in the same squad since Zabani from Bournemouth. Now, after that original horrendous error against Toulouse on Friday night by Safonov, who bails him out? Zabani. And he goes, thanks, I value your contribution. I'm going to show you this by letting in a really tatty equaliser. Yes, exactly. I'm going to take your contribution and just absolutely ruin it. Monaco-Marseille reaching the final stages there. Just ended 2-1. Paul Pogba was on the bench for that this evening, by the way. Didn't get on, but looking ever so jolly. So's Lucas Radetsky, back fit again and in the team, made a couple of important saves there. And the eventual winner, scored by Folarin Balogun. Look that one up. Run from the halfway line, and lovely, lovely chip over Geronimo Rui to win it. And super tight at the top. Yeah, he's been lights out for quite some time. Balogun playing really well. My star of the week is the Rennes striker Esteban Lapoule. Scored twice in a 4-3 win at Brest to take his Ligue tally to 16 goals. Gives him a great chance of winning the top scorer trophy. His record, 25 goals in 56 Ligue games. Very impressive indeed. Who's yours, Andy? Well, I kind of want to go for Julio Enciso, because, of course, with the season-ending injury to Joaquin Panakey that we talked about last week, he played at centre-forward, the Chelsea loanee, scored in Strasbourg's 3-1 win against Marseille, and then celebrated with Panakey's jersey, which I thought was a lovely touch. But unfortunately, Samir Nasri has come blundering in to take it away from him. Now, of course, it was revealed this week that Nasri was living in Dubai
for tax purposes, of course, a tax-free regime there in the UAE. But he's suspected now by the French authorities of having lived in Paris all along. Why? Because in the year of 2022, he made 212 orders on his Deliveroo account.
Wow.
To his Paris address.
A spy he is not. Subtle he is not. If that's the case, we don't know. Well, I imagine there's further twists and turns to come in this story, I would think.
I'll tell you, there is a man who needs to keep a closer eye on his phone.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you can enjoy complete coverage of the Randox Grand National Festival from Aintree on Racing TV, the only channel showing every race live. Don't miss a second of the action at Aintree and join Racing TV with a 60% saving now. Head to racingtv.com/talksport, but hurry as the offer ends on Sunday, the 12th of April. To celebrate, Racing TV are giving away 4 tickets to the Bet365 Jump Finale at Sandown Park and a 1-year subscription to the channel. Go to talksport.com/win to enter. 18+. T's and C's apply. After the break, we're going to be talking all things Serie A.
What about Mo Salah? With Saudi in mind, is he now the most eligible free agent around?
It's a strange one because Saudi sources sense that MLS are going to make a big push, and MLS sources think he's nailed on to go to Saudi Arabia. And as a free agent, of course, there might be European interest. I'm told that reports linking him with a move to PSG are wider the mark. They're past that Galacticos era within MLS. A fair few teams have ruled themselves out, such as San Diego, for example, and New York City FC. But there will be franchises in MLS exploring that deal, something that Chicago might enter the fray, and others believe that one of the 2 clubs in Los Angeles will be interested within Saudi Arabia. We know the clubs themselves would love to be able to sign Salah, particularly Al Qadsiya, where Brendan Rodgers is manager, Al Ittihad and Al Hilal. Neom FC could enter the picture as well. But the strange thing I'm hearing in Saudi, Jim, is that the clubs would love him. They're going to be able to finance it. They're reliant on central funding and central deal making.
We are motoring along on Trans-Europe Express. Kevin Hatchard alongside Andy Brassel for this one. And we are going to go to Italy. It has finished at San Siro. Inter have beaten Roma by 5-2, taking an important step towards the Scudetto. And Andy, this could have been an awkward game against Gianpiero Gasparini's team. We know that Roma do struggle against the fellow big hitters in Serie A. But they were taken apart, weren't they, really?
Yeah, they were. And it's the most fluency we've seen from Inter in a long time. And I think a big part of that is, it seems obvious, but a really fresh Lautaro and Marcus Thuram, who on their day, I mean, I know you could say European and world football is not awash with front twos at the moment, but they're as good as it gets. You know, they're so complementary to each other. Now, I can't really think of 2 players, and we kind of touched on this with Daniele last week, 2 players of elite level who've really suffered so much from playing so many games over the last couple of years. I guess you could put Julian Alvarez in that category as well, perhaps. But I wanted to ask you, because Thuram was the guy who really sealed the deal with a 4th goal, front post header. Everything about him screams Premier League to me. And there's been increasing speculation over the last month or two. Lautaro is never leaving. He's Mr. Inter. He's the captain. He's the guy that Icardi should have been, really, in terms of Inter. And he's going to stay there forever. But with Marcus Thuram, there's increasing speculation that they'll sell him probably to a Premier League club. It would be pure profit, of course, because in terms of capital gains, because they got him for nothing from Borussia Mönchengladbach when he was out of contract. You've seen a lot of him with Borussia Mönchengladbach in the first place in Germany. How do you think he fits in the Premier League? And do you think he fits in the Premier League?
I think he can do. I think what's been really interesting about his development was that I always felt at Gladbach he was a very streaky player. I think when he was hot, he was very hot, but he would have these long spells where you weren't quite sure what you were going to get. And at times at Gladbach, he played in a much more wide role.
Yeah.
And it was actually when he moved into the centre that he looked a lot more dangerous and started scoring more goals. But when he went to Inter, my big question was, can he do this again and again and again? And I have been surprised by just how consistently effective he's been in front of goal. And I actually think Lautaro's role in this is really important, because if you look at what he did alongside Romelu Lukaku, he is willing to be a facilitator. Yes, he's a goal scorer, but he is somebody that seems to relish playing in the front too.
He makes everyone look good, doesn't he? If you think of Lautaro with Edin Dzeko, brilliant. If you think of Lautaro with Lukaku, brilliant. Of course, he tried to get him to come back to Inter, and he decided to try and bin that off for a Juventus move that never came off. But look, I think that says a lot about Lautaro. It really underlines a couple of goals for him tonight, and he felt really fresh and got a bit of rest as well. Went off after about an hour, 65 minutes, and they do have that depth this season with Pio Esposito, Boni as well, who I think is going to grow into a really good player for them. So they're kind of set for the post Thuram already, aren't they? But I think it just underlines like how incredibly underrated Lautaro is in world football circles, really.
You won't get any argument about that from me.
Not underrated by us.
But absolutely not. Overrated, probably, if anything, because he's absolutely incredible. I'm still angry about Esposito taking that first penalty for Italy, by the way. Why would you put a young player in that situation? Staying with Italy, actually, because this is a really important win for Inter in the title race. So we'll come to Napoli's game against Milan. But I wanted to ask you about Antonio Conte, because he's being linked with a second stab at the Italy job. And the feeling coming out of Italy is that De Laurentiis wouldn't necessarily stand in his way if he wanted to go.
Well, I think 2 years of Antonio Conte is 5-6 years of any other coach, isn't it?
I did wonder that, actually, when it came out that De Laurentiis would be fine with this, and I thought the earache would end, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah, we'll be really sorry to lose you. Yeah. I think just on every level, Antonio Conte is a coach, not a manager. Because if you're a president or you're a board or a sporting director, you're managing Antonio Conte. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of domestic trophies, there's absolutely no arguing with his record. And Napoli have done well out of it. I think it was the right thing for him to stay on for the second season, the right thing for the club and the right thing for Conte as well. And if you look at what happens with them this season, regardless of this result against Milan tomorrow night, because, of course, a Napoli win, and they have been in much better nick recently, it puts them back sort of in the title race. I mean, they're not totally out of it if they get over the line. And despite obviously Conteing in the Champions League, the fact that they've managed to all but secure themselves a Champions League place and get themselves in the mix for the title and in the mix for a title defence, when we know Inter have been the best team in the league for ages, regardless of who's won it, it's just such a better title defence than they managed last time around after Spalletti went. And I think they needed to avoid that situation where big name coach goes and they don't really know how to deal with it. Because I think De Laurentiis, in fairness to him, has looked at it and think, how could I have dealt with that better? Because he knew they couldn't afford another one of those seasons. So they need to keep up that momentum by being in the Champions League. Okay, they'll learn how to play in the Champions League later on, but from a financial and prestige perspective, they need to be in the Champions League for the moment. But I do think it's quite an exhausting experience for both sides. It's probably exhausting for Antonio Conte as well.
Yeah.
So for him to be able to walk away, he seemed exasperated at various points. I mean, he's obviously...
That's not like him.
I know. But he's obviously got a bond with those players. But I think the amount of injuries has really got on top of him, where actually the amount of injuries that they've had has been a lot, but it's entirely commensurate with an elite team in modern football, or a team that's becoming an elite team in modern football. You know, dealing with that amount of games, it's normal, I think, to have the amount of injuries that they've got, unfortunately, because that's simply the way that football's going. And I think for him to take a little step back, we know he doesn't want to coach outside Italy for family reasons. So to me, Saudi doesn't make any sense at all. This could be the moment for him to reshape Italy with the right president.
It's a huge game for Milan as well. Max Allegri has said that he's not interested in the Italy job. He wants to stay at Milan for years to come. Whether Milan will let him stay for years to come might depend on how they finish the season. At the other end of the table, Andy, massive win for Fiorentina and a really interesting goal scorer.
Yeah, Nicola Fagioli, who a lot of people felt should have been picked for these two games. Look, we're not saying he necessarily would have made the difference, but Fagioli, who of course was involved in the betting scandal with Sandro Tonali, that's really set back his career, has really impressively rebuilt his career in Florence. And despite the fact they've had, on the whole, quite a rough season, they've improved a lot over the last couple of months, and he's been a massive part of that. And funnily enough, they didn't play well. They played the worst they've played in weeks for the away game against Verona, who are pretty much condemned to relegation anyway. But with this win, with Fagioli scoring a very classy winning goal in the last 10 minutes, means, and you could tell by the way they celebrated it, how much it meant. It means that they're 5 points clear of the drop zone, and they look nailed on for relegation at one point, and that they've done it without sacking a second coach, because Paolo Vanoli was really on the hot seat at one point. It looked like he wouldn't last past Christmas. And Fagioli's had a massive part in that. And look, whether he should have been picked or not, he's going to be part of Italy in the future. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Andy, who's your star of the week from Serie A?
My star of the week is, I've gone for a bit of Portuguese influence, João Mario. Right back, who moved from Juventus to Juventus from Porto in the summer. And the way it went at Juventus probably played him out of contention for the World Cup, because I think he's such a talented player. He could have been in with a shout of going to the World Cup, but loaned to Bologna. Looks like they're going to sign him permanently from Juventus in the summer window. A bit of an up and down season for Bologna, but he's been a real find. Got the opening goal at Cremonese with a really, really delicious volley.
I've gone for Ulises Garcia. Fantastic strike from distance that sparked Sassuolo's comeback in a 2-1 win over Cagliari. Andrea Pinamonti went on to get the winner. The first hour of Trans-Europe Express has absolutely flown by. Plenty more to come in the next couple of hours.
Yeah, I know, Ali, I got in trouble with you and Cass yesterday because you accused me of basically coming in and causing absolute chaos with the Marco Correa and Chelsea story. So I've got another one for you today. I thought, why not just carry it on?
Good on you.
And I thought we'd carry on with Chelsea and Enzo Fernandez, because Enzo Fernandez in the Chelsea firing line. Chelsea players have been unimpressed with his leadership on and off the pitch during the team's dramatic slump in form. He's berated teammates on the pitch, been vocal in the dressing room. Obviously, he's a vice-captain at Chelsea. He's put his own future in doubt. He has hinted at Real Madrid. He then recently has said on a stream whilst on international duty about how he'd love to live in Madrid. I mean, he ain't really playing hard to get, is he? It's giving a little bit desperate. It's not a good look, is it? As a Chelsea fan, you'd want him out if he's behaving like this.
Well, listen, if he doesn't want to be there, it's very, very difficult for the manager or the players, to want somebody in the dressing room like that. They've got the potential to be a bit of a rotten apple, if you like. And I just think there's a few boys, particularly in international duty, they go away and then they get caught up.
They forget, don't they, their place?
They do. They think that, that these comments won't get back to their mother clubs and things like that. So
I'll tell you something, Gary, though, and Angelina, Real Madrid aren't paying 100 million for Enzo Fernandez.
No chance.
I'll tell you that now. So you better shut up. Unless he wants to go to Atletico Madrid.
More green jackets have been lost at the 12th than at the Augusta City dry cleaners. Rory McIlroy knows this better than most. But what is Amen Corner and why is it so iconic? The famous sequence has always been there since the Masters began in 1934. It didn't get its name until '58, though, when American sports writer Herbert Warren Wind, on the left, wrote, "At the farthest reach of the Augusta National Course, down in the Amen Corner." He drew inspiration from the 1933 jazz song Shouting in That Amen Corner by the Dorsey Brothers. The reason behind its difficulty is all in the sand and the water. Tournament officials don't even bother to count the balls lost in there each year, such is the sheer number. The 11th, named White Dogwood, is a downhill 520-yard par 4 with a pond to the left of the green and a bunker to the right. Both cause a lot of trouble each year. The 12th, Golden Bell, is perhaps the most famous hole in the world, with danger everywhere. Many aim for the flag, but look, get it even slightly wrong, and you're in the azaleas at the back, or the bunkers at the front, or even worse, Rays Creek. Or you can play it safe and aim for the open green on the left. You chicken. Tiger Woods once said, if you make 4 bogeys from Thursday to Sunday, you're doing well. And the highest ever score on that hole? 13. It's a par 3. Tom Weiskopf in 1980 was the sorry soul. Often the iconic Ben Hogan Bridge is the only thing players enjoy about Golden Bell. Even if you escape there unscathed, though, you met with Azalea, the dogleg par 5 13th. It tempts players to go for the green in 2, but cut over those trees on the left at your peril. Every year, it seems, Amen Corner destroys someone's dreams. Rory McIlroy dropped 3 shots through here as his round unravelled in 2011. In 2016, a year after navigating Amen Corner expertly, Jordan Spieth shot a quadruple bogey on the 12th to throw away his green jacket. I mean, it sounds like my game, to be honest. So who'll be the next to be brought to their knees, praying for mercy after Amen Corner?
Welcome one and all to Trans Europe Express with me, Kevin Hatchard, and the Jose Mourinho to my Andre Villas-Boas, the European football expert, Andy Brassel. Still to come, we've got previews of the quarterfinals across the Champions League, the Europa League and the Conference League, with English interest in all of them. We're going to hear from our South American expert, Tim Vickery, as always as well. You are all very welcome to join us on the Trans-Europe Express. Now, the La Liga title race has taken a massive twist in Mallorca. It's time for this.
Sa carrière, le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé! Mbappé! Little give and go, Mbappe's in! Oh, it's 2-2! He scored twice in 2 minutes! Tête de Kylian Mbappé. Allez, Kylian!
As a commentator, those snippets of commentary get me every time.
Yeah.
Get me right in the feels. Lovely stuff. It's been a really bad weekend for Real Madrid. And as we dip into Mbappe Watch and check out what's happening in the world of Kylian Mbappe, the truth is his team, Real Madrid, have taken a big blow this weekend. Yeah,
went down 2-1 at Mallorca, as you were saying earlier, Kev, and it was a game they should have won with some comfort, and not just because Mallorca are where they are in the table at the moment. That late winner by Vedat Muriqi takes them out of the bottom three, and they're really alive and fighting in the relegation battle. But this was a game where Real Madrid had plenty of the ball. They had plenty of chances and weren't able to take them. And, this is what they're meant to do to other teams. They're meant to mug other teams. And they were
It's the Real Madrid way.
It is. And that they were properly mugged themselves. And so for all those people who've been saying that, Alvaro Arbeloa, he's the new Zidane, isn't he? He really isn't. He really isn't. I guess, to a degree, people will say, La Liga doesn't matter, does it? Because, the real thing for them is the Champions League. Well, look, we're going to find out pretty quickly this week, because they are playing a team that, at least on the evidence of this season, and probably last season, and maybe even the season before, is a lot better than them. Yeah. Now, we'll come to that a little bit later. But if we're looking for a bit of good news for Real Madrid, it's the fact that Kylian Mbappe was able to start, was able to look dangerous, was able to create, if not take, chances. You were saying to me earlier, I know you're a big member of the Goalkeepers Union, that Leo Roman was really good in goal for Mallorca, and he was excellent, and you need your goalkeeper to be like that in Mallorca's position. But it's interesting because obviously other injured players coming back, they were briefly level towards the end when Eder Militao headed in. And
good to see him back, by the way.
It is, and especially as he had so many serious injuries, the indications are that they're going to lean on him, and Alvaro Arbeloa is going to lean on him pretty heavily. Which, Militao being Militao, look, he's a brilliant player, but he's a physical player who sometimes pays the price for that. There is risk inherent leaning on him, I think. Whereas Arbeloa made it clear afterwards that he's not able to do that with Jude Bellingham next. Bellingham came on for the last 20-25 minutes and half hour, and he looked quite rusty, I thought. And Arbeloa said afterwards, look, I just can't start him against Bayern. I would love to, but I just can't. He's not ready.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, I think, about Real Madrid at the moment, because we had all this farce of, did Mbappe have the wrong leg scanned? And there was clearly whatever...
And Camavinga.
Yeah, Camavinga as well. And what it has done, as amusing as that may seem, there are big question marks over the whole operation medically for Real Madrid, because when you think of how many serious injuries they've had, it's not just the number of injuries, it's the severity of the injuries. And you're talking about a club that styles itself as the best and biggest on the planet. And if they're having players going down with ACLs and what have you on a regular basis, that question mark's always going to be there.
Well, I think the problem is, and we've seen it in so many other sports as well, is once a player doesn't trust you to look after them physically, then you've got a massive problem that's very, very hard to get over. Now, if that's happening with even one star player at Real Madrid, let alone a couple, they've got a huge issue to deal with, and that's actually quite difficult to turn around. So clearly they're going to make some big changes in the medical department, but they need to make some big changes in personnel as well, and that's clear. And so whatever happens in the rest of this season, look, let's imagine a miracle happens and Alvaro Arbeloa like Di Matteo's it and guides them to the, because he's not going to Zidane it. He's not capable of Zidaneing it. He gets them to the
Di Matteo is set now, isn't it? That is the template. Bless Roberto Di Matteo, and it's a brilliant achievement. But
it's a verb for a reason.
Yeah, that's what he'll always have. Kind of that's the standard, isn't it? Oh yeah, he managed to somehow get them to win the Champions League.
Yeah, it is. And look, if Real Madrid were to win the Champions League, for example, it would be one of the weaker Real Madrid teams of recent years. Look, they have plenty of constituent parts that can make them into a really good side, but they're not there yet. And I think certainly in terms of defence, they need to have a proper rethink. Like I said, they need at least 2 new centre-backs this summer. We know that Alaba's going. Rudiger's out of contract and they've not discussed a new one with him yet. So I think it's Premier League or, to satisfy me, Atletico Madrid. I mean, nothing like an Atletico revenge season is there. So I think that would be fun. But look, there's a lot of changes they've got to make. Interestingly, if we go back to the last time they were really serious in the Champions League, so when they won in 2024, even if they weren't the better team in the final against Dortmund, funnily enough, Joselu is revealed is not extending his contract in Qatar at the end of this season. He's on the market.
Pull the lever. Pull the Joselu lever.
Well, it's possible, but I don't know about you, but I thought when you saw that brilliant finish by Vedat Muriqi, who's had a weird old week, so I'm sure you're going to tell us, 19th goal of the season for him at 31 years old, very unfashionable striker.
Not in this parish, he's not.
No, he's not. He's a Trans-Europe Express legend. But how could Real Madrid do someone like that? Because it's a weird thing to say, isn't it, when you've got Mbappe? If they'd have had Vedat Muriqi, they would have won that game yesterday.
What I loved was that Muriqi, having scored the goal, he was part of the Kosovo squad that was so desperate to make the World Cup. Didn't make it. He'd missed a penalty against Elche in the previous game. So really tough time for him. He just burst into tears. He's this big hulk of a man. They call him the pirate for a reason, because he does look like a pirate of old. And yet he just burst into tears. And what I really liked as well was that Mallorca put out a video of him on a boat, very much enjoying the Mallorca lifestyle. And all he said was, if you're watching this video, it means I've scored a goal. And then the boat just disappears off into the sunset. So I thought that was fun. But yeah, I think what's really interesting about this defeat at Mallorca is what it does do for Arbeloa, because after that Manchester City performance in the Champions League, it was all very roses and rainbows. He's doing a brilliant job, etc., etc. Do the players believe it? That's the biggest question, because there's the debate in the media about it. Do the players believe it?
Is that even a question in a Champions League context? Because the thing is, always players, especially Real Madrid players, I think, will look inside themselves. It sounds a bit of a cliche, but I think they will.
And we're encouraged to by Ancelotti and Zidane.
Yeah, and they'll be raised by those big occasions. The thing is, to win stuff, it's not just about winning the big games. It's more actually about winning the little games, in inverted commas. Now, you look at the teams that Alvaro Arbeloa's Real Madrid has lost to since apparently Xabi Alonso had completely lost control of the dressing room. Since then, Arbeloa has lost to Albacete, Osasuna, Getafe, Benfica and Mallorca. Like, what does that say for him?
That's the player issue, isn't it?
Well,
you can't get them up for the smaller games.
I mean, that says that he's not going to be a winning Real Madrid coach. That's what it says. It says a lot more, actually, than even the 7-point gap at the top. Because if the dynamics were different, you could look at that 7-point gap at the top and you think, well, Barcelona are in the Champions League. They've got a smaller squad. They've got a few big injuries at the moment, as I'm sure we'll come to when we talk about La Liga. You think, just let's run the course. There's 8 games left. There's no reason we can't keep chipping away at that, even despite this game. But the fact is, if you're consistently chucking away points away from home against teams that you've got 10 times the budget of, I mean, what does that say about... Well, it says something about the players, obviously, but it says something about the coach too.
Just a word on Bellingham as well. You mentioned him earlier on, and that Arbeloa said, we can't play him for the full 90 minutes in games. I go back to the Dortmund. I mean, let's be honest. At 16, he was playing for Birmingham. At 19, he was captaining Dortmund. And then he goes to Real Madrid. He's winning the Champions League. He's a very important player for them. He's playing game after game after game after game. We know the way that he plays. It's all action. You know, he is a physical player. Was this always going to happen at some stage? And have Real Madrid and then England got to be really careful with him for the rest of this season and the World Cup?
Well, that sounds, I guess really it comes out of the mouth of Arbeloa, who's the ultimate company man. We've got to look after him. He's not just speaking about his interests, he's speaking about the club's interests, which I think is very, very important. And the fact that club's interests align with, as you say, looking after Jude Bellingham, I think is very, very important. I think, as I know you do, I think there's a question of long-term fit, because there was always a question with that, you know, when Mbappe arrived, people were asking, how are Mbappe and Vinicius ever going to fit in the same team? Which is really the wrong question. The question is, how are Mbappe, Vinicius and Bellingham, and I guess now Arda Güler, who's been arguably their most important player this season, the one who can really open the door, how are they going to fit in the same team? You know, where do you put Federico Valverde, who has been doing some quite Bellinghamish things actually in an advanced midfield position in the absence of Jude Bellingham, which I think in itself tells you how much Real Madrid still need first season at the Bernabeu, Jude Bellingham. But I think there's really a superstar too many in the top bit of the pitch. I think ultimately it might well be Vinicius that is the odd one out and that's squeezed out. Remember, of course, you know, Rodrigo's not even in the picture at the moment because he's got that ACL that will make him miss the World Cup. But really, considering that Jude Bellingham is in his third season there now, that they really haven't, and Mbappe's in his second, Vinicius has been there and been a star for ages, that they're no closer to finding A, the right coach, and B, the right fit, I think is quite concerning.
And just quickly, the most important topic we're going to talk about across the 3 hours, Kylian Mbappe has a Lego set.
He does. So this week, Lego announced that Kylian Mbappe, Cristiano Ronaldo, Leo Messi and Vinicius Junior all have Lego figures and Lego sets around them coming out. What they've done is they've got one of those, you know, the pieces that I'm going to sell myself out here. You know, Lego Ninjas, Ninjago.
Yes.
Right. And they often have like sort of fireballs coming out of their hands, and they're those special pieces. Well, they've got fire and ice coming out of their feet. So I think it's fire for Messi and Ronaldo and ice for Vinicius and for Mbappe. I don't know, maybe that's a Real Madrid contractual thing. But what's...
They insisted on something white, I see, to go with the
Yeah. I get it. Of course, Lego got them all in the same room, sort of putting their pieces together, and it's amazing photos, really. Just any situation where you've got all these put together. The amazing thing to me, Kevin, as well, is how much the players are being paid for their social media posts on it. So Vinicius, 260,000 euros per social media post. Kylian Mbappe, 760,000 euros. That's going to go down well over coffee at Valdebebas, isn't it?
Awkward.
Yeah, and then you've got Leo Messi, who gets north of 2.5 million euros per post. And then you have Cristiano Ronaldo, who's getting 3.1 million, I think, per social media post.
Is that all? Imagine that.
Well, you know, he's been skint since he's left Europe, hasn't he? So,
well, yes. He's found it really difficult going to Saudi Arabia.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
A good news story to end the section. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk more La Liga right here on Trans Europe Express.
In terms of greatest Premier League managers, because if he does leave, he will go down as one of the greats.
Yes.
What's your top three?
Sir Alex, Pep, and Jose for me.
What?
They're
Jose Mourinho?
Yeah. What do you mean, Jose Mourinho?
Not Arsene Wenger?
Arsene Wenger was in the conversation.
Oh, you're putting Jose in there?
Yeah, of course I'm putting Jose in there. 5.5 years, three Premier Leagues. Arsene Wenger had
Premier League all-time manager.
22 years he was there, Arsene Wenger. Won 3. Jose, 5.5. Won 3.
I mean, in terms of...
Sir Alex, because he was there...
Sir Alex is no question, right?
He's the Don. He is the Don.
Yeah.
Right, he's the Don.
Yeah.
Pep's number 2. Can't argue. Because it's longevity as well. How long's he been there, Pep? Is it 9 or 10 years? I think I'm right in saying that. If it's not 9, it's coming up for 10.
26.
Okay, so 10 years he's got. Okay.
Right, yeah.
He's won 6 Premier Leagues.
Yeah.
Come on. That's...
Yeah, no, but Arsene Wenger changed football.
Oh, he did?
Arsene Wenger, when he come to the Premier League, he revolutionised the game. He completely changed the way we play now, the way the Premier League is, what it's become.
Without question.
Really and truthfully, was down to Arsene Wenger.
Without question, because Arsene Wenger changed...
The latest episode of How to Win the World Cup is now live. Matt Ford and Jacob Hawley speak to the authority on South American football, Tim Vickery, about Brazil's chances this summer and if they can end their 24-year wait to win the World Cup. That's the How to Win the World Cup podcast, available right now on the TalkSport app or your favourite podcast provider. Now we are going to talk La Liga, and the headline is Hansi given the flick. Lamine Yamal cut a frustrated figure after Barcelona's 2-1 win at Atletico Madrid. And speaking after the game, the Barca boss Flick gave his thoughts on the youngster's move.
I don't know exactly what is, but at the end, how I said before, a lot of emotion in the game, and Lamine try everything to score the second goal. This is perfect. This is great, and of course, not everything was perfect, but he tried everything. When he get the ball, he's always available, and this is a good situation. And for me, it's like that. So we have 3 days to prepare for the next match. It's very important, the Champions League, and he will be in a better mood than after the game.
Some of the things that Lamine did in the game, Andy, phenomenal.
Like the man of the match by an absolute mile. And there are a very small group of players in, like, not just this generation of football, but any generation of football, who are event viewing. You know, I think we can name most of them. Zinedine Zidane, Johan Cruyff in his day, Eusebio, Messi, Ronaldo, of course, Ronaldo Nazario. It's not a busy group. But
Thomas Muller, if you're niche.
Thomas Muller, if you're you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, look,
exactly.
I think, but Lamine Yamal has become that so quickly, and it's astonishing. Any of those guys we've listed, he's better than all of them were at the same age.
It is crazy what he's able to do. We know about the skills. We know about the incredible technical quality he has. The thing that blows my mind about him being the age that he is, the awareness of everything around him, the ability to effectively lead a team, not by ranting and raving, but he has that sense of when to up the tempo, when to do something special, when to really go up a gear. I mean, that's really quite unusual.
There are players older than him who are like phenomenal dribblers who don't know when to let go of the ball still.
Yeah.
And he's known since he was 16. This is a remarkable thing. There was a highlight in this game of which you may or may not have seen. Look, you just have to like YouTube the highlights if you haven't already. not for the goals actually, but for a bit where Lamine Yamal gets the ball on the right-hand touchline, absolutely destroys Nico Gonzalez with an incredible bit of skill. And that's not even the best bit. He plays this ball with the outside of his left foot from probably about 30, 35 yards away that curves around the back of the Atletico defence and finds Fermin, and he's so stunned by it that he can't really take it in his stride and misses it by quite a long way in the end. But really, I think this is an example of, look, we know Atletico aren't as good as defensively as they used to be, but still to open them up. And the way they defended, because of course Nico Gonzalez then gets sent off for a second yellow card for a foul on Fermin, and so they sort of sit back and make it difficult for Barcelona to break them. And it's only a very fortunate winner by Robert Lewandowski that gives them that win that they need and puts them 7 points clear at the top. But I think it's almost because of that situation that Lamine Yamal is so good, because he has to do something special every time to open them up, and nearly manages it so many times. And as Hansi Flick says, that's why he blew his top, because it was just so frustrating.
Yeah, and it's that passion that really drives him as well. You can see that in every game. We're going to talk a lot about Atletico and Barcelona when we come to the Champions League. I thought it was interesting that they rested Julian Alvarez, they rested Lookman, they made some changes, so they're clearly thinking ahead.
Well, that's the thing. Like, everything was on this for Barcelona because they're still in the title race. Now, Atletico have been almost mathematically certain of making the top four for weeks, and they know they can't win the league. So really, given that this is the first game of 3 between them in 10 days, Atletico kind of like faxed in a reasonable copy of how you should play in this game. But it didn't feel like it was do or die for them, did it?
And there was no need for it to either.
No.
So I think that does make a lot of sense. Just on Marcus Rashford, who scored an important equaliser in the game, Hansi Flick was coy about the mechanics of bringing him in as a permanent signing, but he's kind of kept the same line, I feel, like he's had all the way through, which is, I really like him as a player. He has to deliver the numbers in terms of goals and assists, but he can definitely help us. And he has done that. And Rafinha is now injured and is going to be injured for the next few weeks. Rashford stepped up in the first chunk of the season when Rafinha was injured.
Yeah,
he's doing it again.
Yeah, he is. And I think when you consider that he's not a starter, if everyone's fit, to reach double figures in goals and assists, I think is excellent. And really, when we talked about him last week, we were saying how, because of what Barcelona wanted him for in the first place, which was cover for Lamine Yamal and cover for Rafinha, that he has become a dedicated wide player. And in this, when they're not going with really a nailed-on centre forward, Dani Olmo sort of plays a false 9 in this, and Rashford drops right, and he drops into that central position at various points as well. I think it just underlines how unbelievably intelligent he is. I mean, I really hope he stays at Barcelona, because I think they suit each other brilliantly. And for what it's worth, I think Hansi Flick's being coy because, well, it's Barcelona. There's bound to be some sort of fiscal skeleton in some nearby closet, isn't there?
He knows that well by now.
Yeah, he does,
no doubt about that. I wanted to talk about a really important defeat for Sevilla. It was the first game for their new coach. They lost to Oviedo. Nobody loses at Oviedo, but Sevilla have managed it. Now, we've spoken on this show for quite some time about Sevilla circling the plug hole, but they might actually go this time, mightn't they? Yeah, they might. And I think Plata has really been given a sort of hide into nothing dealing with this after the firing of Matías Almeida. And I looked at it a few weeks back and I thought, well, you know, they're not good, but they're not going to go down. But then you lose at Oviedo, and the fact that that's what, their third successive defeat? Yeah, third successive defeat. No wins in 5, and now they're 2 points above the drop. They're level on points with Mallorca, which tells you everything you need to know. They're just not good. You know, there's just no real quality there. But if they went down, that would be enormous news, wouldn't it?
It would be enormous news, but it would be, I think, it'd probably make a lot of their supporters, and, you know, Sevilla Twitter was having an absolute meltdown today during the game, especially as Tanguy Nianzou, very big signing for them from German football. He still gets paid $8 million a year.
Yeah.
When they're absolutely skint, by the way, and he can barely put one foot in front of the other. He's been like maybe definitely one of their worst ever signings, and it's such a shame because he doesn't deserve to have this on him. You know, really, he was brought in for one project and then it turned into something completely different. You know, the club is institutionally in a massive mess, and it's such a shame. And you know, to think of a club that's won 6 UEFA Cups / Europa Leagues since the turn of the century, for them to find themselves in this situation, it's like beyond mismanagement.
Andy, who's your star of the week in La Liga?
Well, having watched Lyon struggle to score again and failed to score again this afternoon against modest opposition, it's got to be Martin Satriano, a player who they brought in as cover, has turned out to be a starter they never really wanted, and they thought a couple of weeks ago, oh, this is good, we've sold him at a profit. And now they can't stick the ball in the back of the net, and Satriano looks like Ronaldo Nazario. He got his 4th goal of the season as Getafe beat Athletic Bilbao today 2-0. When he tried, it was a tap-in, he tried really hard to miss it, but still he put it in, celebrating that permanent move. And he's had such bad luck with injuries since he was fated as a youngster at Inter. I really like him. He's so hard-working. It's great to see him doing well.
I'm going to go for the Espanyol keeper, Marko Dimitrovic. He was absolutely brilliant as Espanyol ground out a goalless draw away at Betis. Coming up, we're going to have a look at the Champions League quarterfinals on Trans Europe Express.
If you look at the fact that Chelsea have done 600 million worth of transfers in the 25-26 season and paid 65 million agent fees. Now go look at Aston Villa. Aston Villa have done 70 million worth of transfers, 57 million worth of sales, and paid 38 million pounds in agents fees. So when you look at the ratios, you go, you did 120 million worth of business and you paid 38 million, which is about 26%.
Right.
Chelsea have done 600 million worth of business and paid 65 million. So whilst the numbers look horrible and in the scale of things enormous, in the representative terms of what business has been done, they're not enormous. Now, then you take the losses. Chelsea got 100, however they got it and however they concocted it, they got 125 million pounds worth of profit last year. We know how they did it. They sold their women's team and a whole raft of other things.
I'm going to get to that.
So the PS, well, that was what they were allowed to do, right? And in previous times,
I agree.
In previous times, Man City and Chelsea were allowed to build football teams with impunity, and Newcastle can't. So we all are a product of timing, and we're all a product of opportunity, and we're all a product of creative outcomes based upon the circumstances that we operate in the time that we operate them in. So I look at this and go, yeah, they've made 250 million pounds of losses, right? We are, if they're not worried about it, and they believe they can cover the gap between the PSR and also the consequences of squad cap rules that they put into place, that they've got consequences on already, then that's their business.
But it's up to us to observe it. And if Chelsea are the biggest spenders on agents and the biggest spenders on transfers and have the biggest losses, how on earth can Egbali, Behdad Egbali, who you...
The TalkSport 20k giveaway.
Now listen up, we are officially under 1 week to go for your chance to win £20,000 right here on TalkSport. That's 20 grand tax-free straight into your bank account. Spend it, save it or splash it. The choice is yours. Here is how to enter. For your chance to win, text WIN to 83338. That's WIN to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. The lines close this Thursday at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. So for your chance to win £20,000, text WIN to 83338 now. So it is time on Trans-Europe Express to switch our attention to the Champions League quarter-finals. Now we've got live commentary on Tuesday of Sporting against Arsenal at the Jose Alvalade. Adrian Durham will be your presenter for that one. Jim Proudfoot alongside the former Benfica defender Scott Minto. And Andy, that is a really intriguing game, not least because Arsenal have had a wobble. They were beaten by Manchester City in the League Cup final. Last night they were beaten at Southampton in the FA Cup quarter-finals. And I think anyone who saw what Sporting did to Bodo Glimt in the last round, I think will realise just how tough this could be for the Gunners.
Yeah, 13 goals in 3 games since losing the first leg, which is pretty amazing. Got themselves back in the Portuguese title race as well, as we'll maybe touch on later, by winning 4-2 on Friday night. They're all playing on Friday night, these overseas teams, aren't they, if they're playing at all?
Imagine that league's actually looking out for their teams.
I know.
Extra days off and things like
I
that.
know, amazing. Oh, the one thing we have to say is that's at least partially affected by there being less away fans in many of these situations. Yes. So moving games late on is not such a hassle. The other clubs are important too, is what I'm saying. But look, I think the interesting thing about what Sporting did this Friday night in beating Santa Clara, no Luis Suarez. And Luis Suarez, Colombian Luis Suarez.
Yeah, not that one. I was just going to say not that one.
We're forced to call him every time. He's had a phenomenal season, 33 goals. He was a big driver in that win over Bodo Glimt, the 5-0. When it's weird, of all the games where teams were 3-0 down, the coach, Rui Borges, said it like before the game. If any team can come back from 3-0 down, it's us. And that really tells you about the level of belief there is in that dressing room.
And they were relentless from the first moment of that game. They believed they could turn it round.
Yeah, they did, and it never felt like they wouldn't really at any minute, didn't it? You know, they were fantastic in normal time and in extra time as well. So many different attacking weapons. Like I said, they can still score goals without their main goal scorer. Trincao is having a great season. Of course, he's recently extended his contract and his moments at Wolves, but has really become something special in his time at Sporting.
Are you surprised how he's kicked on?
A little bit, actually. It was clear that he had talent from way back before he went to Barcelona. At Braga, they identified he was someone special quickly. And then you thought he'll get lost at Barcelona, and he kind of did, to be honest.
A lot of players do.
Yeah, I think that is fair. He just went a little bit too soon. But the way he's rebuilt his career post-moustache, I think we have to say. I think that's been a big part of it.
It's important to mark out a player's career if they have had a moustache era. I think it is important to put that.
Yeah, it is. And they've got a lot of quality. There's no doubt about it, and just an attitude where they expect to be able to compete. And they think they've done it in European context against big teams and against often English Premier League teams in the last couple of years. If you think back to that beating of Manchester City, and they've proved that there's life beyond Victor Gyökeres. They've recruited well as well. But bearing in mind that they don't have the biggest means in the context of Portuguese football, let alone European football. What they've done and what Rui Borges has managed to keep on doing since the exits of Amorim and Gyökeres is really incredible. So look, Arsenal are favourites. There's no doubt about that. But Sporting are feeling very strong at the moment, and Arsenal having their first proper wobble of the season, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I think what's really intriguing, actually, is when the draw was made and we saw the bracket, there was a lot of, oh, well, look at the draw Arsenal have got. They'll just walk to the final. And I think when you really looked at it, Leverkusen, I think, was the easiest of the three, potentially, because they're not in a good place right now. So,
and they made quite hard work of it, nevertheless.
They did, and this is not easy. And if you come through that, it's either Atletico Madrid or Barcelona. So this is going to take some winning for Arsenal.
Yeah, it is. And, of course, no one believes you can win the Champions League until you've actually won it, which, is fair enough, I suppose. Whether they've got the ability to win it is not really the question. We know the answer to that already. They have, of course. But, of course, you think of the last time that Arsenal and Sporting met as well. And you think of that Pedro Gonçalves goal at the Emirates as well, and ended up knocking them out of the Europa League on penalties.
They were outstanding that night as well.
They were, and they're a much better side now. So I think, it's a proper task.
Real Madrid's Bayern Munich is always European royalty. It's always fascinating. This Bayern team, I think, is incredible. I've covered German football a long, long time. They're not perfect, and last season I think they were flawed. I think Kompany's first campaign, yes, they won the league by 13 points, but they had some pretty horrible performances away from home.
Yes.
They lost at Villa, they got stuffed at Feyenoord, and I wasn't surprised when Inter knocked them out. I think,
although arguably they were the better team in those two.
Yes. But you felt that vulnerability was always there. The high line, just giving away too many goals. I think they're more aggressive. I think they're more physical. I think Kompany's really drilled down into what they need to do defensively. I think they take more rests in terms of keeping possession for longer spells. And they feel to me like they're more ready to go in the Champions League this season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. For me, they've been a favourite for this competition for a long time. And I would say there are two big changes in what they've done, and you talked about the aggression in their defending. Jonathan Tah has been a great signing.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about that. And the other thing is they're far better able to cope without Musiala than they were last year, because really when he got taken away from them and they were playing Thomas Müller, great player, but not a direct replacement for him in any way, shape or form, doesn't have any of the same characteristics, or they'd pop Rafael Guerreiro in that spot as they did. Of course, he announced this week that he's leaving Bayern at the end of the season. Neither of those were adequate replacements. Whereas I think now they seem a lot better equipped to ride out injuries, don't they? I mean, even Harry Kane, the one player who you'd assume they can't do without, they give quite presentable performances without him. Now, look, I think they're a little bit lucky not to lose at Freiburg yesterday. Not that has a huge amount of relevance to this, but the way that they were able to dig that out, even when they're on a bad day, even when they had the best attacking player and his backup out, I think that says a lot. It also says how incredibly important Michael Olise is, because if you've been watching Bayern all season, you can make the argument that Harry Kane's not even their best player this season.
I think he's the best player in Germany. I've thought that for a long time. I love Kane. His all-round game is phenomenal. I think it's the best Kane we've seen.
Yeah.
However, I just think you watch Olise, and it is an artist at work, and it's the skill, it's the awareness, but it's also now, I know he had times at Palace when he was in and out with injury, but now you're looking at somebody who's robust. He almost never misses a game.
It's almost like
delivers every time.
It's almost like what happened to Arjen Robben at Bayern. He had a reputation of being really injured, and he developed this personal way of looking after himself, both individually and collectively. He did loads of yoga and Pilates, and it really helped him. We talk about Milan. Back in the day, the Milan lab really extending the careers of people and helping them to be their fittest, their physically best version of themselves. And really, if you're looking at the template of someone like Robben, or the way that, despite not being exactly stacked, that Thomas Müller was able to carry on at a top level for so long, it feels like Olise is getting a little bit of that. Personally, I feel he's the guy who could win France the World Cup.
Yes. I think if you look at the confidence he plays with, the other thing that really interests me about him is I think the public persona of him is he's very quiet. I think he just doesn't like doing the media.
No.
I think he hates interviews. But actually, when you listen to Bayern players talk about him, they will say how vocal he is in the changing room. He's talking about tactics. He's talking about, what the team needs to do better. To an extent, he's become one of Kompany's kind of right-hand men on the pitch, kind of extension of the coach. We talked about Real Madrid earlier, and we talked about the defensive problems they've had and all the injuries they've had. I look at this Bayern attack, and you do fear for Real Madrid. I know they were very cohesive against City. I think this is another level up.
Yeah, it is, totally. And I think that the difference is with Manchester City, in their current state, they will always give you a chance. And Real Madrid were able to take advantage of that. But something that Archie Rinter, the ESPN touchline reporter, a friend of both of ours, who watches Bayern a lot, said to me, which has really stuck with me about Kompany's Bayern, is that if they do give you a chance, it's so fleeting, it's either take it or it's gone. Because everything they do is so physical, so quick, that Bayern just offer you a little sliver of light. And that requires just absolute elite quality to be able to take advantage of that. You know what? I don't think Real Madrid are quite there. I don't feel they are an elite team at the moment.
No, I think Bayern are favourites, and I think they will show it over those two legs. And they have an awful record against Real Madrid. But I genuinely believe this set of players will not care at all. Two massive Champions League quarterfinals to talk about after the break.
Is it nigh on impossible, Frank, to keep a lid on the hype surrounding Moses at the moment?
No, it's not. And the Zone had a massive rating for the fight. I think it's their highest rating this year for it, so I'm told. So, he's people are well aware of what it, who he is and what a talent he is, and he showed that certainly on Saturday. It was a very mature, performance with a very durable, tough guy. And he'd done a job. He'd done a magnificent job. And, look, that's the future of boxing. He's the future of heavyweight boxing. And I'd have no problem tomorrow making him with Mr. Usyk. I'd make it in a heartbeat tomorrow.
Question, Frank, for you. I mean, we had the other day on Talk Boxing Nikisa Badarian, who I know you'll know, and he talked about, and you don't need to be taught how to manage and match fights, right? That's not what I'm making the point here. I'm sort of sense-checking what he said. His attitude was, he would, if he was managing Atomic, it'd stick him in with Andy Ruiz in Madison Square Garden, because it gives an opportunity, A, to put him in against another decent fighter to give him another learning curve, but also breaks him into America by doing something Anthony Joshua couldn't do, which is knocking out American heavyweight that has some repute. Is that got some sense in that thinking?
Sorry, who was it who said that?
Nikisa Badarian, Jake Paul.
You are listening to Trans-Europe Express with Kevin Hatchard sitting in for Danny Kelly alongside Andy Brassel. Big commentary for you on TalkSport on Wednesday. That's at 8 o'clock. It's PSG against Liverpool, the first leg of that Champions League quarter-final. Adrian Durham, your presenter for that one, Jim Proudfoot, will be alongside the former England captain Stuart Pearce. Andy, this is a really intriguing game because if you look at last season, PSG were able to knock Liverpool out on penalties, and that was what really was the launch pad for them for the rest of the season. Went on to win the Champions League for the first time. Liverpool are in a much worse position now than they were then, and it feels like PSG, and it's taken a while for them to do this, I think, starting to get back towards those higher gears.
Yeah, they are. And you know what? We talked about earlier about Monaco, the hottest team in France at the moment. I think they've done PSG a real favour, because in the way that they played against PSG twice in the Champions League and then in Ligue 1, where they beat them at the Parc des Princes, it was a big wake-up for PSG. And, you know, it was notable that their Ballon d'Or winner, Ousmane Dembélé, went afterwards, look, you know, he went, what do we want to be? Do we really want to go and win stuff again? And he called out the team publicly, which I think is quite notable, because we don't really think of him. He's not a John Terry type, is he?
No, but he's a Ballon d'Or winner now. And I suppose
status comes with that, doesn't it?
And after that second half of last season, his word carries a lot more weight now, I think.
Yeah, it does. It does. And look, I think I'm sort of holding off going all in on PSG as the favourites for this competition. And there are a load of reasons for that. But mainly, I think it's the inconsistency they've shown this season, which is completely normal.
Is that fatigue?
After the calendar they've had. I think you can't tell when the next injury / glut of injuries is going to be. But if we're talking about this first leg, when really, if they play well, they could like put Liverpool away. I'm trying not to lean too much on what happened at Manchester City yesterday, but PSG are quite significantly better than Manchester City. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And they've just come off a good win where they, you know, gave themselves some nice reps, but they also managed to get good rest to the players who need it. I think you look at that, they're able to get Zabani in better form now as well. If we're looking at the defence, Dembélé feels like he's peaking, which I think is good for them. Kvaratskhelia feels like he's peaking, which is another thing. They haven't had to overuse Desiree Doué. He's come back feeling great, of course, because he's scored his first 2 international goals and he feels like a proper France player now. You know, I think there's a load of elements. Of course, they're missing Bradley Barcola, which is a bit of a pain because he'd been finding his absolute best as well. But they've got a ton of options.
The temptation is to paint this as a really tough game for Liverpool, which it is, and a really tough tie for Liverpool, which of course it is. But what we have seen from PSG, and you've mentioned it there, that tie against Monaco, where Monaco went down to 10 men in both legs, and yet looked better than PSG for big swathes of that. You look at the home game against Newcastle that PSG played, and I thought Newcastle played well, and PSG didn't really. There is an opportunity for this Liverpool team. If you think of how they played at Inter, how they played at Marseille, games where you went into it thinking, this is going to be pretty tough, actually.
Yeah.
And they managed to find a way. Now, Liverpool are not consistent, we know that, but they are capable of a one-off performance.
Yeah, they are. And I think if you're going to get PSG anywhere, it might be at the Parc des Princes, actually. You know, we've seen them lose some important games there and be put under pressure in some important games there over the last year or so, games that you wouldn't expect. And like you said with Liverpool, I mean, maybe this actually does come at the right time for them, because, you know, I think, as we said, it's easy to look into what happened at Manchester City yesterday, but there's one like obvious effect from that. There has to be some sort of accountability next. You know, not just the fact that I won't say there's no pressure on them. Of course, there's pressure on them. I mean, I think it's tempting to. Some people will be saying there's no pressure on them because no one believes in them, because PSG are the strong favourites. But look, if you're Liverpool, there's always pressure on you. There's no doubt about that. And the fact is, there has to be some sort of response to what happened in that game, because it's just so far from good enough when you look at the players that they've got available to them.
I think we have to talk about Florian Wirtz, simply because I'm the president and you're the vice president of the Wirtz Appreciation Society.
Yeah, I'm wearing my leather cut at the moment.
Are you shocked by... Because I think we've seen flashes. I think even when he started and he wasn't getting goals, wasn't getting assists, we saw flashes. But since that back injury and since he's come back, he hasn't been the Wirtz that we know.
No, he hasn't. And I just think it's almost like the rookie wall in NBA, isn't it? That first season in the Premier League is tough. Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, look, when he was on the international break, he had a great game for Germany at Switzerland. He was fantastic with the 2 goals and 2 assists, as we spoke about last week. But I guess one of Liverpool's whole problems this season has been a lot changing far too quickly, and they kind of lost the magic of what happened last season accordingly. Now, really, for someone to turn up in their first Premier League season to one of the biggest clubs in the world and be told, right, this is your team, I mean, that is a lot of pressure, especially when the guy whose team it previously was is still there, yes, albeit playing a different role. I think it'll be easier for him, even though they don't play the same position, obviously, when Mo Salah is gone.
Atletico against Barcelona again, but this time in Barcelona. They've played each other a lot this season.
Yes.
In that Copa del Rey semi-final, Atleti played the first leg at home and won it 4-0, but then lost 3-0 at Camp Nou and nearly blew it. How is this going to go? Bearing in mind they've just played at the weekend and Barcelona won.
Well, as we said, Atletico held a little bit back.
Just a bit.
But Barcelona aren't able to, because they've got so many injuries at the moment, and injuries to key guys. So you look at Rafinha, you look at the fact that Marc Bernal got injured at the weekend, so he won't play. And he's that bit of extra muscle in midfield as well, especially against non-Premier League opposition. I thought he, was a bit inconsistent against Newcastle, because it was like, wow, people hit me back.
Yeah.
But even though he's a big guy, and I think really indicative of the new sort of player that La Masia is producing.
And Flick really likes him, doesn't he? As well?
Yeah, I really like him too. And of course, coming from German football, Flick would like him. I think it's fair to say he's like maybe his mini Goretzka.
Yes.
But I think if you look at that, and I think it's very hard for Barcelona to do anything different. Look, I would expect them to win this first leg at Camp Nou. They're terrific at Camp Nou. They win all the games there. Just look at the numbers. It's incredible. But I think Atletico can keep it competitive for the second leg. I think what we saw from the Copa del Rey semi is that playing away first is definitely to Atletico's advantage, because for them to know what they have to do in the home leg and then go and do it, I think is ideal for them. When they're sent out to defend a lead, which this current set of players is not capable of doing, that's when they get themselves into trouble. Nearly came a cropper, as you say, in the Copa del Rey semi-final, despite having that massive lead from the first leg against Barcelona. Nearly came a cropper against Spurs under Igor Tudor. That's almost...
Who does that?
If Atletico go on to win this Champions League some way, that will be a Trivial Pursuit question in years to come, won't it?
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of Trivial Pursuit questions about that Igor Tudor spell.
Yeah,
at Spurs, definitely.
They probably will, but I think for them to be like quite fresh in the final third as well, Atletico can get something from this and keep it alive for the second leg.
Lots to come in the final hour of Trans-Europe Express. We're going to hear from our South American football expert, Tim Vickery. We're going to look ahead to the quarterfinals in the Conference League and the Europa League. We've got English interest in both of those competitions. It's all coming up on Trans-Europe Express.
When we look at the end of the season, let's talk about the title race and the run-in. Manchester City and Arsenal going head-to-head. Arsenal, obviously, in the prime seat right now. They've got Bournemouth at home, City away, Newcastle and Fulham at home, a trip to West Ham before they host Burnley and have Palace on the final day. One extra game to be played by Manchester City. They're away at Chelsea. This isn't this weekend, of course. They're both playing in the FA Cup. But when the Premier League does return, Manchester City will be away at Chelsea. They'll host Arsenal. They're away at Burnley and Everton. They're at home to Brentford, away at Bournemouth, and then 2 home games to end the season against Villa and Palace. When you look at the run-ins, who do you favour?
Arsenal. I think they've got a better run-in, and from Arsenal's point of view, if they can't get that done, I'll be shocked. Yeah. I'll be shocked. I think they've been brilliant all season in terms of the way they've managed games, the way they've won games. Going back to that, they've just won games. They haven't been brilliant on the eye at times. Who cares in their camp? Who cares in that dressing room? Just get it done. And now when I'm looking at the run-in, that is a favourable run-in for Arsenal. They've got the Manchester City game. They can even afford to lose that. People are talking about the final the other day. Well, you can lose that game, and I still back you to win all of the other games anyway. So, if they don't do it, I don't know. If they'll never do it if they don't do it this season.
I think it has to be Arsenal, who have a 9-point lead at the moment. Obviously, City have a game in hand. It has to be done. They've won 4 games in a row, Arsenal, in the Premier League, by the way.
Who would have thought a sporting event's halftime show could have a bigger impact than the game itself? Well, the Super Bowl halftime show does exactly that. In 2024, Usher brought in an audience of 180 million worldwide, the biggest ever in the event's history. But how did singing and dancing get to be the centerpiece of America's biggest sporting event? The first edition of the Super Bowl was held in 1967, when the Green Bay Packers beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Los Angeles. Because of the sheer size of the event, organisers wanted to put on entertainment at halftime for the fans in the stadium. It was a display of marching bands, dancers and pure USA patriotism, and that was the theme that followed for years. In the 1980s, the Walt Disney Company got involved, and we started seeing some interesting and questionable displays. But we got our first glimpse of halftime shows to come in '93, when none other than Michael Jackson stunned fans with his 15-minute medley of his own smash hits. When he walked out on stage, he had to wait for the crowd's cheers to die down for about 2 minutes before even starting his first song. Diana Ross, Gloria Estefan, Phil Collins all starred in their own shows, as did Aerosmith, who performed alongside NSYNC. Things got a little bit out of hand in 2004 when Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson produced perhaps the most famous or infamous wardrobe malfunction in history. Shows from the likes of Prince, Lady Gaga and Beyoncé are considered by critics as the best. To give you an idea of the scale of things, Rihanna's 2023 halftime show included roughly 800 people. These ranged from backing dancers to stage crew to camera operatives broadcasting to millions around the world. The whole stage for that show was built in roughly 8 minutes and was broken down and cleared away in the same time. The acts perform for free nowadays, even though the experts reckon it costs around $13 million to put on Rihanna's show. Artists know they'll rocket up the charts in the following weeks. Rihanna's average sales improved by 140% in the months following her performance. The Super Bowl halftime show will be a fixture in pop culture for years to come. So the question is, who next?
Great to have you all with us on Trans-Europe Express. Kevin Hatchard sitting in for Danny Kelly, alongside me, the European football superbrain that is Andy Brassel. We're going to talk to our South American expert, Tim Vickery, in just a little while. But first, some breaking news, because it's been revealed by Pep Lijnders, the Manchester City assistant boss, that Bernardo Silva is leaving Manchester City at the end of this season. He says that he hopes Bernardo Silva enjoys the last few weeks of his time with City, and he deserves a fond farewell and lots of attention. So Bernardo Silva, Manchester City legend, leaving the club at the end of this season. Andy Brassel, where could you see him going? It's been an extraordinary spell at City. Where now?
It has, and key figure, of course, in the 2023 treble, to say the very least. But look, I think the surprising thing about Bernardo Silva, a little bit like Pep Guardiola himself, is that he stayed at City so long. And I think that says a lot about really the sporting management that they've built, the environment that they've built there. Because Bernardo Silva, having interviewed him a couple of times, firstly when he was at Monaco, it was clear that he kind of wanted to travel playing football. He wanted to go to different places. I think that probably is one of the reasons, rather than necessarily a financial reason, that he's already been asked by Benfica if he would go back, and he's already said no to that. So that door looks pretty much shut.
So he wants a new experience.
Yes. So I guess the ones that are on the table, if this had been a couple of years ago, I think there are more on the table, because I think you say PSG definitely interested, and they would be interested on a free. But for them to sign someone who's 30 on a free on big wages is not with their current wage politic, which is one of the reasons that Gigi Donnarumma left. Similarly with Juventus, for slightly different reasons. They've been looking to get younger. Of course, they've been interested in him for a long time. And look, maybe they still would, because they wouldn't have to pay a transfer fee. I wonder if the fact that the management at Inter used to be the management at Juventus, if Hakan Çalhanoğlu goes, maybe he's a replacement midfielder there, even if it's not exactly like for like. So Italy wouldn't surprise me at all. And of course, I guess we can't rule out the Middle East if it's purely for financial reasons.
So Bernardo Silva set to leave Manchester City at the end of the season. Right, time to delve into all things South American with Tim Vickery. Tim, great to have you with us as always.
Yeah, lovely to be here. Now, you're going to witness, Kevin, the very easy way to trigger Andy Brass. You know who's a huge admirer of Bernardo Silva?
Go on.
John Textor. John Textor. What was his reaction?
Yes. I don't think we've got long enough for Andy to talk about John Textor,
there's a possibility we didn't include for Bernardo Silva. Botafogo sign him, Leon pay for it.
Well, of course, there you go.
There we go.
Just to add more fuel to that particular fire. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Let's start with the World Cup, Tim, because for Bolivia, it ended up being heartbreak, just falling at that final hurdle.
It did, yeah. The last place, the 48th place, went to Iraq and not to Bolivia in a game there in Mexico where the corner count read Iraq, 2 corners, Bolivia 16. But it was always Iraq's game. They started both halves well. One of those corners came early on and Iraq scored from it. And the other one was the last kick of the game when Iraq was defending a lead. It could well be that Bolivia have dodged a bullet, because the group that they failed to qualify is France, Senegal and Norway, which is a tough ask, isn't it? That's a very, very tough group. And Bolivia, at one stage, they'd almost given up on this World Cup. It's a very, very young squad that has kind of been constructed looking at 2030. But still, that doesn't ease the disappointment. The country was really, really mobilised, hoping to go back to the World Cup for the first time since 1994, and it didn't happen.
And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't add in that former AFC Wimbledon striker Ali Al-Hamadi scored the winner for Iraq in that. First Iraqi to play in the Premier League as well, with Ipswich Town. But moving away from that, Tim, we've had 2 games for Brazil this week against European opposition. The first one against France, we talked about last weekend. They since beat Croatia right at the end. What's the thinking in terms of squad composition at the end of this? Do you think we have more questions for Carlo Ancelotti than there were maybe a week and a bit ago?
The team, assuming everyone's fit, and a worry about Alisson is developing. But assuming everyone's fit, I think we kind of know the team. What we know less about now than we did before is the squad. Because for this squad to face these opponents, France and Croatia, he brought in a lot of first-timers. And it's a little bit like musical chairs. Now, the music stops now. The ones that he's just called up, do they get the position because they've just been called up? And the ones he's left out, Lucas Paquetá, Richarlison, and so on, are they out of the mix? And it's amazing in terms of the mood, what a difference a result can make. When they played a good first half against Croatia in Orlando, not quite so good second half, and then Croatia equalised late on. And then there's the boos and the cries for Neymar and so on. And then almost instantly, they get one of the most ludicrous penalties I've ever seen in my life. I've measured it from side to side. It's 2 feet long and 3 feet wide, and I can't see the penalty there. And it's Endrick who gets it, who wins the penalty. He's very good off the bench. This could have got him into the squad, into the World Cup squad. And the expectation is that Endrick's going to take it. But it's been pre-established that if the regular penalty taker, Vinny or Rafinha, they're not on the field, it's going to be Igor Thiago. So Igor Thiago then of Brentford steps up to a chorus of boos from the crowd in the stadium who want Endrick to take it. They don't want Igor Thiago. And Igor Thiago slots it in very, very proficiently. And then in stoppage time, Brazil get another one on the break. It's a move involving all the subs there. Igor Thiago, Endrick, Martinelli scores the goal. Does that mean Martinelli's in? He's been out of the squad recently. Is he now in for the World Cup? So one of my tasks at the moment, by close of business tomorrow for World Soccer Magazine's guide, I've got to try and predict the squad for 4 of the South American qualifiers. And the hardest one is Brazil. I really don't know what's going on now. I don't know. As I say, you can pretty much predict the team. But some of the places around the edge, I think the picture has become increasingly confused by the number of options that have now appeared over the last few days in these FIFA dates.
Tim, you're a bit like the Panini guys. They've always got a steep challenge, haven't they? Trying to predict the squad, and there are always a few wild ones. You think, how did he end up in my sticker album?
Good.
And also, why have I got 16 of him? But I guess I wanted to ask you, actually, it was really interesting what you said there, Tim, about the crowd reaction to Igor Thiago taking the penalty and the reaction to some players. And it's something that we don't really talk about that much, that Brazil are always the biggest draw at any World Cup, at any of the World Cups I've been to. And as World Cups have been, I guess, further away from Europe and further away from the base of a lot of European stars, there's been quite a strange atmosphere to the last couple of World Cups, if we look at Qatar and Russia, for example. But still, the atmosphere around a Brazil game is something extraordinary at a World Cup, because everyone there in the stadium, whether they've snuck in and it's the trip of a lifetime or whether they're loaded and they've paid a fortune for seats, they've still got that feeling of, oh my God, I'm seeing Brazil at a World Cup. So what does that really add to Brazil at this World Cup, Tim? And how is that something to negotiate? And is that something that's underestimated when we're looking at the favourites for the World Cup? Because it's a very particular pressure.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're all living in the shadow of Mexico 70. It's the one that, it's the first one that was on TV in most of the world. And it's the one against which all subsequent World Cups have been measured. Now, after Mexico 70, they went 24 years without winning a World Cup. They've now gone once again 24 years and counting without winning the World Cup. So, and they feel that this kind of supremacy position is being threatened, not least because every time since their last triumph in 2002, the ride has ended as soon as they've come up against the European side in the knockout stages. So there's a lot at stake for their prestige in this World Cup. I remember one of the big broadsheet papers in England, the guide to USA 94, saying if Brazil don't do it this time, forget about them as the country of football. And it feels a little bit like that again. In terms of the atmosphere, I think one of the things you have to remember is a lot of those people in the stands are not really football fans. It's more an expression of Brazilian patriotism and of the people who've got the money than it is of the people who are week in, week out following the game. So I think that's something which makes it a different atmosphere, makes it a little bit maybe celebrity heavy. I don't know. I know a lot of people have been very disappointed by the atmosphere. A lot of diehard fans have been very disappointed by the atmosphere in the stadium in Brazil World Cup games, because it seems more of a kind of celebrity entertainment, light entertainment event than it does 90 minutes of football.
What shape
are Argentina in, Tim, or is it difficult to judge given their recent activity?
There are still some known unknowns and some unknown unknowns, and one of them is Lionel Messi going to play the World Cup? We don't know. He snuck away from the stadium after they beat Zambia 5-0 on Tuesday without shedding any light on this issue. So we still don't know that one. They played Mauritania a few days before and they were awful. And we were saying this time last week, Messi hardly makes sense without Julian Alvarez. Julian Alvarez is now the key man. And that was borne out within the first 3 minutes against Zambia because the two of them combined to score a goal. And then shortly before half-time, the two of them combined again to score another goal and put Argentina 2-0 up. They ended 5-0 up. And left a much better impression than they had when they beaten Mauritania. So one of the unknowns is Messi. Another of the unknowns is how to replace Di Maria, the irreplaceable. Now, there's just a hint from what the coach Scaloni has been saying in press conferences, and also from the last few minutes against Zambia, that it could be Valentin Barco of Strasbourg, who's just about to join Chelsea, as the kind of wild card, as the man who can come on as an impact sub, left-footed, but can play either flank. In fact, the last kick of the game was in putting the fifth goal in, and so they won 5-0. So that's just, and Scaloni learned on the hoof in the last World Cup that it's got to be horses for courses. He had to switch around his side. And I wonder if Barco is the man who could be a kind of wild card, a little bit like the way he used Di Maria in the last World Cup. But the big one, I think, hovering over the campaign, is can the same old defensive unit cope with the World Cup, including an extra knockout round? Because against both Mauritania and Zambia, that defensive unit was all at sea against the counter-attack at times. And Martinez in goal had to make some really, really good saves. That, I think, is the big question mark against Argentina's quest to do what has never been done before, to retain the World Cup outside their own home continent.
But I guess if you look at that front half of the team, Kevin, what Tim was saying about Julian Alvarez there, I mean, the fact that, as we were saying earlier, Atletico basically are just killing time in between various cup matches in La Liga. For him to be able to be left out and rested is presumably very good news for Argentina. But can you imagine Argentina going to a US World Cup and there being no Messi? I mean, surely there's enormous commercial pressure.
Yeah, there would be. Absolutely, there would be. And I'm surprised, actually, Tim, that there hasn't been, a commitment either way, because you would have thought by now there would be, because the interest in him into Miami at club level is so enormous. So for him not to be there at a World Cup in the States would be seen as an enormous blow, I would think.
And will someone think of the Lego?
Exactly. What do we do then?
Scaloni says it's all up to him. He has earned the right to decide whether he can do himself justice or not.
Are you surprised he hasn't made that decision yet?
I think, remember, he's in Major League Soccer. I wonder if he would have wanted, if he would have preferred to have played this Finalissima against Spain that fell through because of the situation in the Middle East. It was scheduled for Qatar. But then it fell through because Argentina didn't want to play it. They didn't want to put their prestige on the line. They wanted to do it last year, as was the case with the previous Finalissima when they beat Italy at Wembley a year before the World Cup. They didn't want to do it 3 months before the World Cup. But I wonder if Messi would have seen that as a more accurate measuring rod than the likes of Zambia. I very much expect that he will be here, but he will be there. One thing perhaps he's trying to do there is just ensure that it takes some of the pressure on the field off him a little bit. And after all, some of Argentina's best performances recently, and I cite especially the thrashing of Brazil in March of last year, came without him. And Argentina have learnt how to play without him.
Fascinating to see how that pans out, because an Argentina without Messi seems somewhat unthinkable, but they're going to have to come up with a plan eventually. Always great to hear from Tim Vickery to get all of the latest news from South America. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure. Speak to you next week.
And coming up after the break, we'll be reviewing some really fascinating World Cup playoffs in Europe.
Thomas Tuchel's thrown Foden's World Cup hopes into doubt with some comments that he made to the media, Gabby. Here's an interesting one. He was excellent in camp, but he struggles to show it on the pitch. He was so good in training, and I thought he will just surprise us. But yeah, he struggles to have the full impact. It was put to Tuchel that he could not take a struggling player to the World Cup. I can, he replied, but the question would be if we will. It's not a guarantee that he will come. Now, to be fair to Phil Foden, I think there's only about 5 or 6, well, maybe 5 or 6, but there'll be more, about a dozen guarantees.
Yeah.
But there'll be about maybe 6, 7, 8 that aren't guarantees. And I think Phil Foden has now come into that category, Gab. I mean, we've got to be concerned for him, don't you agree?
I think the problem for me, Ali, is that his form for Manchester City has been incredibly bad for Phil Foden. You know, he come on in the 90th minute, Ali, in the cup final against Arsenal. Got 0 minutes in both games against Real Madrid.
I know, mate.
In his last 11 games, Ali, he's only played a total of 183 minutes out of 990 available minutes. 0 goals this year. We're already in April, Ali.
Yeah.
And even for his country, Ali, he's not performed. He's only got 4 goals in 49.
The TalkSport 20k giveaway.
Now listen up, there is officially less than 1 week to go for your chance to win £20,000 right here on TalkSport. That's 20 grand tax-free straight into your bank account. Spend it or save it, the choice is yours, and here is how to enter. For your chance to win, text WIN to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or you can call 0343 418 7260. The lines close this Thursday at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. For your chance to win £20,000, text WIN to 83338 now. Now we're going to look at the World Cup playoffs in Europe in just a moment. But Andy, you've seen an interesting bit of transfer news potentially in Spanish media.
Yeah, in tomorrow's Marca, there's a headline that says Camavinga more out than in, suggesting that Real Madrid might be prepared to sell him and that his destination would probably be a Premier League club because, of course, PSG have been very interested in the past, but of course they've got so many midfielders at the moment.
And they're stacked, aren't they?
Yeah, and then you think Desiree Doué can play in midfield if he wants to, if they don't play him in the front three. And so for the first time, really, since they signed him from Rennes as a teenager, Real Madrid are actually considering selling him. He's been linked with Premier League clubs loads in the past, of course, but from Real Madrid's perspective, they've never thought about getting rid of him. Now, something might be prepared to change. And we talked about that balance in the squad, didn't we, with Real Madrid before, and that there's probably a bit of lifting and shifting to do in the summer of 2026. And perhaps Camavinga will be one of the outs.
think that's really interesting about him as well. You think he's still very, very young, relatively, but hundreds of games he's already racked up for one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Loads of experience, but mouldable.
Yes.
I think for the right coach.
And versatile as well.
Yeah.
So really interesting to see how that goes. Now, of course, the World Cup picture was completed on Tuesday. We talked at the top of the show about how Italy crashed out. What we didn't talk about, actually, was Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Yeah.
Because that is a hell of an effort for them to have knocked out Italy. First time in over a decade that they have qualified for the World Cup finals. Sergei Barbares, their coach, who had wanted the coaching job for Bosnia over a decade before, didn't get it, went off and became a poker player, then came back, got the job, and he's got them to a World Cup final.
So is what we're taking from that Max Kruse will succeed Julian Nagelsmann?
Yes. Oh, that would be amazing.
Love to see that.
One of the great firebrands of German football.
If you want me to nudge aside Icardi watch for Kruse watch, I'm strongly in favour of that. But yeah, Barbares has done a great job because really Bosnia were on their uppers. If we go back a couple of years, they weren't in a great place after they missed out on the playoffs for Euro 2024. They came and played that friendly, of course, against England at St James's Park, and they were awful. They were the worst Bosnia team I'd seen in ages, really, and that they were unable to build on that 2014 World Cup. I think it's been a tough decade for them. You think, when they last went to a major tournament, Edin Dzeko was in his 20s.
Yeah.
And now he's 40.
Years old.
He's made a massive contribution with that equaliser in Wales, where I thought they were quite lucky to get through, actually, because Wales were better than them in normal times, certainly. But
they're brutal, aren't they? They are physical, they're determined, they really dig in.
And do you know what? Even before the Bastoni sending off, they were the better team by quite a long way, I thought, in that. And there's some young talent around Dzeko as well. And, if you look at Alay Begovic, who it'd be really interesting to see him, of course, in the weeks leading up to that. He re-signed for Leverkusen. He's been at Salzburg, of course, for next season. He set up the equaliser for Dzeko in Cardiff, scored one of the penalties in the shootout, in both of those shootouts. So he's got real nerve
real personality for a player that age.
Yeah, it's incredible, really. But I think it's just a real reminder of there are no easy games in Zenica as well. It's a really brutalist, hostile sort of stadium. Italy never looked like dealing with it. And the way that Bosnia came out the blocks, as if, I suppose the obvious thing to say is, they must have seen the Italian players watching that penalty shootout and saying, yes, we've got Bosnia, we've not got Wales.
Crazy thing to do.
I know.
That was just the team talk written.
You can't get caught doing that, can you? And it was interesting. Federico De Marco, of course, sent a message to former Inter teammate Edin Dzeko to say, I'm really sorry about that. No disrespect intended. And Edin Dzeko just sent him back a message saying, it's fine. I don't know. You can never tell what tone of voice a text is in, though, can you?
That's exactly it. Tone is a big issue with text conversations.
It is.
No doubt about that. Czechia went through. They edged out Denmark, which is a major, major blow for Denmark. But, of course, they've kind of blown it twice now, really, because they lost that game in Scotland and then got dumped into the playoffs. And now they've gone out. I do feel like the Republic of Ireland have missed a real trick there, because I don't think this Czechia team is actually that good. But I want to talk about Sweden, because Graham Potter, now Chelsea fans and West Ham fans, I'd never normally say don't listen to Trans Europe Express, but you might not like this bit for the next 90 seconds or so.
Are we pleased for him?
Great. I'm really pleased for Graham Potter, because I think he is effectively a very nice man. I think he earned his shot at Chelsea, and he was hard done by, I think, with a chaotic club in flux. I think West Ham, he has to carry the can for that.
But it was kind of an impossible job, by the same token, no?
I think but I think he made it look more difficult than maybe it was. I was surprised, given the amount of time he had to prepare, because he had virtually half a season where he knew they weren't going down, and it didn't seem like that preparation had been there in the way that you would hope.
I wonder if he's learned something from that, because obviously it's futile comparing club coaching and international coaching, which is more management than coaching, actually, isn't it? I think it's interesting that he absorbed the optics of it very quickly, because everything that Jon Dahl Tomasson did wrong, or mainly speaking in Danish, I don't think massively helped, did it?
And Potter does speak good Swedish, as we know.
He does, but he's mainly spoken English. Of course, he did that introductory speech in Swedish, which showed a lot of willing, and people really warmed to him because of that. The fact that he understands Swedish football culture. I think what was the smartest move from the Swedish FA is, before even the semi-final against Ukraine, they extend Potter's contract, just to let everyone know where they stand. But really, on the field, I think you have to hand it to two players who've received a lot of criticism in the Premier League this season, in Victor Gyökeres and Anthony Elanga. Now, Elanga is kind of peaking at the wrong time for Newcastle, really a little bit late, but a really good example of what a good player he will probably turn out to be for them if they stick with him. And Gyökeres, I think, you looked at him before in that 2 with Alexander Isak, and really they've been forced, and Potter has been forced to reshape that front part of the team, because what was really revealing, I thought, when you bear in mind that they played at their previous clubs as well as their current ones alone up front, Isak and Gyökeres, the fact that they worked as a 2, albeit in Nations League C, I think was a really, really good example of what intelligent players they are. And now you're back to Gyökeres having to be the main man. Now, that front 3 really worked, of Gyökeres in the middle, Elanga on the right-hand side, and Benjamin Nygren, who's been really good for Celtic this season, in a not great Celtic team. He's been excellent, I think, since coming over from Denmark. And that works so well. You're not putting Isak in the first 11, are you?
Yeah,
if he's fit. And of course, he's had the advantage of not playing that much football this season. But it's a nice problem for Potter to have. And I think really how well that front 3 worked is they were not brilliant against Ukraine, but absolutely clinical. And Poland were definitely better than them on the night. And I really rate that Poland side. I think it's a good Poland side. And they managed to polish them off by just really being just taking their chances. I can't think of the word in English. Just clinical. That's the one.
Terrific effort from them. So Sweden went through, beating Poland. The Czechs edged out Denmark. Bosnia, as we know, beat Italy, and well done to Turkey as well. They were able to win away to a very good Kosovo team. So fantastic effort from them. Coming up after the break on Trans-Europe Express, we'll look ahead to the quarterfinals of the Europa League and the Conference League.
All right, Cundy.
Hello, matey.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
How are you feeling?
I'm all right. I'm okay, yeah.
Gone well?
Yes, so for those that don't know, the hair transplant last Thursday.
Yep.
A couple of days off.
Yeah.
Back in today.
You're looking well, mate. You look well.
So far.
You look hard.
Well, well, the head's been shaved, right? So there's always got the image, haven't you? Like I'm a bit of a thug.
Yeah, you look like you're going to be on like Football Factory or something.
Yeah. But look, it went well. It's such a weird process. I mean, you're in the chair for about 8.5 hours. It's all done.
I mean, that's hell for you, right? You can't.
Oh, mate. Well, they gave me. I fell asleep halfway through it. They gave me sedatives. Yes, I struggle to sit still, mate. But
struggle.
I struggle to sit.
Impossible.
Still. Yes, but they're sedatives, mate. They work their magic. But here we go. So the beginning.
Mate, I like it.
Well, we'll see.
It's the new Cundy.
The new version.
The new version of.
New improved. Don't know about that.
It looks all right, mate. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, well, look, big shout out to the Wimpole Clinic. Thank you very much for what they did. And we'll see the results, mate, over the next coming 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
You've got to have a haircut, mate. What's the haircut look? What's the trim? You
Don't know.
Quiff?
Don't know what I'm going to go for, mate.
You look all right with the old skin.
Yes, I'm not having a hair transplant and then looking like this.
No?
I'm not. No, you don't have a hair transplant and shave
It's
your
all
head.
right, though.
Well, for the time being, I've got no choice. I've got no choice. This is how it's going to be. All right, so there you go.
You're making me die.
Yeah, it's a bit. I mean, did it hurt? Obviously, during the operation, it's very weird, or during the procedure.
Final half hour of Trans-Europe Express with Kevin Hatchard sitting in for Danny Kelly and Andy Brassel. We welcome your company as always. It's absolutely flown by. And coming up, a look at these quarterfinals in both the Europa League and the Conference League. Now, we've got live commentary of Bologna against Aston Villa. That's on TalkSport on Thursday, 8 o'clock, that one. Ian Dancer, your commentator, alongside the former Aston Villa captain, Andy Townsend. And you've got a choice of listening because over on TalkSport 2, we've got Porto against Nottingham Forest in the Europa League as well. Joe Shannon alongside the former England women's striker, Leanne Sanderson. Andy, let's start with Bologna-Villa, because Bologna at times in Serie A this season have not been at their best, have not been great. But then you look at Vincenzo Italiano and his record in cup competitions, and if we leave finals to one side, it is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really good. I just feel that having seen Villa actually at first hand quite a lot in Europe this season, that they'll just have that little extra physical drop on Bologna. I mean, Bologna were in a not great spot when they arrived at Villa Park for the group game, which was, back in September, I think. And I was at that. And it felt like Villa had to play well for like 15 minutes to beat them, really. I think the issue that Bologna have got is their rabbit from a hat player, Riccardo Orsolini, has not been at his best over the last couple of months. And I think that's a bit of an issue for them. Now, Lewis Ferguson getting back to his best, although he got a late red card today. So if he'd have got like a red card with half an hour left, you would have thought, oh, great, he's well rested for Aston Villa. But as it was, he got sent off in stoppage time. So it doesn't make any difference at all. It does mean he will get a rest between the two games.
Yes,
which
he'll be suspended. Yeah.
I think is quite interesting. But look, it was such a massive shock for Bologna coming through the last 16 game against Roma, which has been the start of Roma's current dip.
Yeah, to go there and win was a phenomenal result.
Yeah, well,
even though it needed extra time.
Exactly, to lose a 2-goal lead and then go through and win it in extra time was pretty good. The fact that Jonathan Rowe has really settled now is a plus for them as well. But for me, Villa are the strong favourites in this, even though they've been less predictable in recent weeks. I would say the interesting thing in this quarter of the draw, everyone feels we're moving inexorably towards a Forest Villa semi-final, and obviously the history of that is quite irresistible. But I think Porto's first really average performance of this season was away at Forest, a game that I went to back in October in the league stage, and still Forest had to work pretty hard to beat them, and it needed 2 penalties to do that. I think Porto might be able to edge them.
Well, this is a Forest team that has an enormous relegation battle to fight, and as lovely as a run in Europe is, and as rich a European history as Forest have,
yes,
ultimately it's not the priority.
No, it's not. And I think the difference between Porto and, say, Fenerbahce, who have a lot of good players, even though they didn't show it in that first leg in Istanbul, is Porto are pretty robust physically. And so they will be all the way into this. They'll be frustrated at losing a couple of points in the Portuguese title race this weekend. They'll be determined to put that right with the Dragão. And if you look at the players that they've brought in on a temporary basis in this winter transfer window, Terem Moffi, who of course West Ham really wanted at one point, and he chose to go to Nice instead, which didn't really work out.
Didn't work out well at all.
No, but he's back to his best after a big injury, or edging towards his best. And Seko Fofana, who of course had that spell at Manchester City before and has done really well in Ligue, he's such a skillful yet like physical player as well. I mean, ever since Sergio Conceição, Porto have been a pretty physical side. But of course, we don't really talk about this, but this is the sort of football that Francesco Farioli leans into as well. Quite realistic sort of football. And now he's got the players to do that. And you look at that midfield, you look at Seko Fofana, you look at Victor Froholt, who's had a brilliant first season in Portugal. These are tough lads. You know, they'll leave marks on you. So I think that is something like, if Forest aren't all the way in for this, and like you said, I don't know if they can be in the situation that they're in, then like Porto have got a real chance.
When Andre Villas-Boas took the presidency at Porto, and that was something that he'd been working towards for years and years and years,
yes,
since he was coach, and maybe even before that.
Since he was writing little notes for Bobby Robson and popping them in his letterbox.
Exactly. So this is what he wanted. This could be an incredible season for him personally, couldn't it? Because if they do see it through in the Premier League, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes' time, if they see that through, and if they win this, I mean, that is a phenomenal effort.
Well, that would be Villas-Boas doing Liga and Europa League as a coach and as a president. Has anyone ever done that?
They can't have, surely. Because it's so unusual. It's so unusual that somebody who'd been a coach for as long as he had, even though he was a young man when he started, had that burning desire to be a club president, because that's something we wouldn't understand in the UK. And it's even in continental Europe, that's highly unusual.
And definitely no one's done it before they're 50.
No.
I mean, that's
and he's
clear.
done Paris-Dakar Rally as well, hasn't he? And all of that. He's a man for adventure, isn't he, Villas-Boas?
Maybe he'll drive the trophy home from Istanbul.
I could absolutely see that. I just want to very quickly go back to Villa, because we talked about Bologna. Have Villa had enough credit for knocking Lille out in the previous round? Because I'm not sure they have.
Well, I think what was interesting about that is that was a tie between two very good sides who were both really out of form. And really, I think Villa did the hard work by digging out the result in the away game. You bear in mind that Ollie Watkins goal, which was a great piece of poacherism, was, I don't know if
poacherism.
I don't know if poacherism is the word. It is now.
It is now, yeah.
But that
Anti-Brussels coined the term poacherism.
It was great poacherism, and I think that was, if they go on and win this competition, I think they'll look back at that goal and think, we weren't playing well. We went to a hot stadium full of like 50,000 people on our backs on a cold night, and we dug that game out. And I think that's a big deal.
So live commentary across the TalkSport network of both Bologna against Aston Villa and Porto against Nottingham Forest. That's on Thursday at 8 o'clock. We'll keep you updated on the Conference League quarter-final between Crystal Palace and Fiorentina. You'll get reports of that one. This is really interesting because Fiorentina, for most of the season, have been fighting relegation, have been an absolute mess. However, their record in the Conference League is really good.
Yeah, and Fagioli's playing well, as we said earlier. Moise Kean's playing well. David De Gea, who I don't think we mentioned earlier, had the game of, like, probably the best game he's had since he left Manchester United, really, and he was in his prime there to win them that game of Fiorentina, or give them the opportunity to win that game. I wonder if Palace might struggle a little bit here, because they've never properly convinced me. Clearly, they've got the best squad of players in this competition, and they have had since the beginning. But they've never really looked like they've got to grips with playing in Europe, and especially struggling to break teams down. Maybe this will actually work better for them because Fiorentina might come and at Selhurst Park and have a go at them. They're not going to put everyone behind the ball because that's something that Palace have really struggled with in the European context. And I think it's a really good example of no matter how good you are, you have to learn how to play in Europe. And it feels as if Palace is still getting to grips with that. Look, cards on the table. I want the Shakhtar Palace semi-final. I'm really looking forward to that. And I guess the interesting thing in the other half of this competition is you have two pretty good teams in Mainz who are finding a bit of form. As
they're looking really good. Really
and they're well coached, aren't they, since their change of coach as well. And funnily enough, Gary O'Neill doing really, really well at Strasbourg. They're looking at a very competitive cup team. Of course, they're in the semi-finals of the Coupe de France as well. So what's interesting to me is having seen what English clubs have done in the Conference League and how they're kind of too big for it, really, over the last couple of years, it's clear once again that the English team do have the best set of players, obviously, in this competition, but they're not the clear favourite. It's a much more open competition.
Yeah, can they bring it to bear in this particular Conference League? Some great games coming up. Now, after the break, we're going to go around the leagues right here on Trans Europe Express.
What about Mo Salah? With Saudi in mind, is he now the most eligible free agent around?
It's a strange one because Saudi sources sense that MLS are going to make a big push, and MLS sources think he's nailed on to go to Saudi Arabia. And as a free agent, of course, there might be European interest. I'm told that reports linking him with a move to PSG are wide of the mark. They're past that Galacticos era within MLS. A fair few teams have ruled themselves out, such as San Diego, for example, and New York City FC. But there will be franchises in MLS exploring that deal. Some think that Chicago might enter the fray, and others believe that one of the two clubs in Los Angeles will be interested within Saudi Arabia. We know the clubs themselves would love to be able to sign Salah, particularly Al Qadsiya, where Brendan Rodgers is manager, Al Ittihad and Al Hilal. Neom FC could enter the picture as well. But the strange thing I'm hearing in Saudi, Jim, is that the clubs would love him. They've got to be able to finance it. They're reliant on central funding, and central deal makers are still actually debating, is there value in signing Salah at his age and at his wage? Last summer, they would have done it because they were negotiating.
Can't believe we've only got around about 13 minutes left of Trans Europe Express. It's absolutely flown by. Kevin Hatchard alongside Andy Brassel, and we're going to do what we always do at the end of the show, and we're going to zoom around the other leagues. We're going to start in the Netherlands, and we have a very unsurprising champion, Andy.
Title party for PSV at last.
Boss ball works.
They tried to make it dramatic, I think. Bear in mind, they're playing Utrecht yesterday. Everyone's ready for the title party. They're 2-0 down in 12 minutes, which is amazing. They get themselves 3-2 in front, concede an equaliser, and then Druesch scores the winner right at the end.
This is the most pay-to-boss way to win the title you can imagine, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. Not only I want you to win, lads, but I don't just want you to win. I want you to do some mad stuff as well. I want you to defend like you're on roller skates.
Yes.
And that's how we're gonna set it up. But really, it was only clinched today mathematically when Feyenoord failed to win at Volendam. So all the PSV fans in all the bars in Eindhoven watching that, and on that little strip in the centre of town, whose name escapes me, they were all out in the pubs straight after that, and flares, phones, all the rest of it. Great fun. Bad news though for Jordi Schouten, who would have been a shoo-in for the Netherlands team for the World Cup, tore his cruciates in this game.
That's a nightmare.
At 29 years old is probably his best and maybe only chance of a World Cup. He's been very philosophical about it. He said, when I went down, you know straight away that something's wrong. You hope against hope, but yeah, it's the worst it is. But he said, I'm lucky to be at a great club like I am.
Yeah, it breaks your heart when that kind of thing happens. Ajax, not the champions, and we're never likely to be the champions this time around, even though they came very close last season.
23 points behind.
I mean, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
Back to where they were pre-Farioli. And they lost 2-1 at home to Twente yesterday, Kev. And it's a really damaging defeat for them because after having an initial uplift under Oscar Garcia, their second team coach appointed by his old mate Jordi Cruyff, of course, and then promoted when it was going really wrong under Fred Grimm. They had 2 shots on target in this game. Ajax in a home game. Look, Twente are a good side. Let's not pretend otherwise, but this shouldn't be happening to Ajax. It's dropped them down to 5th place as well. So, you know, they're looking at like maybe even no European football next season.
It's been a horrendous time for them in recent seasons. Let's go to Turkey because big twists in the title race, not 1 but 2.
Yeah, that's right. And the big game yesterday between Trabzonspor and Galatasaray, won deservedly by Trabzonspor. They're in the Black Sea, very strong at home. Paul Onuachu, the former Southampton striker, got them off and away with, of course, a header.
All 6'7" of him.
Yeah, in the early part of that game. But look, they really deserve to win this, Trabzon. They were excellent, and they're kind of creeping up in the title race, so they're just 3 points behind now. Galatasaray do have a game in hand away to Göztepe, one of the European chasers in the week, but a tough result for Galatasaray and a really big one for Fenerbahce in the Istanbul derby. They beat Besiktas with a very, very dubious penalty in the 11th minute of stoppage time.
Which just wasn't a penalty, was it?
Well, no, it wasn't.
And Besiktas should put it on their socials saying it was a scandalous decision.
It's amazing when you get an official club account saying it's a scandalous decision in capital letters, converted by Kerem Aktürkoğlu. So look, I'm just going to read you the top of the Turkish title race. So Galatasaray played 27, 64 points. Fenerbahce and Trabzonspor both played 28, but both on 63. And Trabzon are the one to watch. I mean, no one saw them coming, and they're playing brilliantly at the moment.
Now, this is all very well, this talk of title races and whatever, but we love a goalkeeper scoring. That's all we really care about, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. And I think we have to take our hat off to one of the other teams of Istanbul that doesn't really get enough mentions, I think, even though I try and get them involved in Trans Europe Express all the time. Kazim Pasha, who are great fun. They're right there. They're 10 minutes walk from Taksim Square. It's a great place to go and watch football. And Andreas Giannoutis, their Greek goalkeeper, with what can only be described as a Paul Robinson-esque finish, from his own goal kick, bounced over his opposite number and saw them, Kazim Pasha, to a 2-0 win. Now they're looking absolutely cooked going back 3 weeks. Good little run for them. They're out of the bottom 3 now.
I mean, I looked at the other goalkeeper. He had divers boots on. I mean, I don't know what he's doing. He doesn't move his feet at all.
Maybe. Look, we have to have a word for poor old Bayezid, who was comforted by Giannoutis at the end. But he didn't comfort him at the time.
No.
At the time, after scoring, he did a knee skid. I mean, it's one thing to score as a goalkeeper from that sort of long goal kick. It's another thing to do a knee skid in your own half.
He might never score again, though, so you've got to do it. You've got to do it if you're going to score. Portugal. Now, we talked about Porto a little while ago in terms of their quarter-final in the Europa League against Forest. but they very surprisingly blown 2 points in the title race, and they did it in spectacular and, if you're a neutral, quite funny fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question that everyone in Portugal is asking is Farioli going to Farioli again? That was one of the headlines in a Bola today, the Portuguese paper, because Porto led, were pegged back against Famalicão. Famalicão were brilliant, by the way. They played and they created more chances at Dragão than Sporting did, definitely more than Benfica did, because they didn't try to score under Jose Mourinho, as you would expect.
No surprises there.
But Famalicão deserved their late equaliser, because Porto thought they'd won it. They went 2-1 up through the aforementioned Seko Fofana in the 3rd minute of stoppage time with a brilliant solo goal. By the way, he did a slalom through the Famalicão defence and then finished into the corner. And, you know, Farioli ran on the pitch like Mourinho style. The whole place went absolutely nuts. And to concede an equaliser after that, so deflating. So they've still got a 5-point lead at the top, 8 points from Benfica, but both Sporting and Benfica have a game in hand.
I did show the highlights to the kids, and they thought it was very, very funny. There were so many celebrations by Porto, and then Famalicão scored just the most messy equaliser to make it level.
They all count. I mean,
they all do.
There can't be a better example of that, can there?
Now, we probably need about 3 hours for this. The Belgian playoffs begin. Andy, try and explain the Belgian playoffs to us.
Well, so what they do is after 30 games, they stop it. They halve your points and they separate into groups for the Championship, for Euro playoffs, and for relegation. So we know who the title contenders are. They're Union Saint-Gilloise, Sint-Truiden, Anderlecht, Club Brugge, Ghent, and Mechelen. They're the 6, and it's just kicked off on Saturday with Union Saint-Gilloise, who are, of course, the defending champions, beating Sint-Truiden in that first game. Sint-Truiden, who finished 2nd in the regular season, which was pretty amazing. Also found out this week, as you, again, as a member of the Goalkeepers Union, very keen to point out, the retirement of Simon Mignolet, who's been great for Club Brugge over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, actually, that, because what you often find is when a player plays for a top club and then they leave, there might be a bit of a decline, but he's actually managed to have a bit of a renaissance, and he's been excellent for Club Brugge for quite some time now.
He really has, and a real leader, as well as performing at a really high level. I think if you were going to compare him to a song, you would compare him to I Am the Resurrection by the Stone Roses, because really you've got the pop bit, which is like 3.5 minutes, but the coda actually gives it the most meaning, doesn't it?
Lovely. Well, that's the kind of thing Danny would have loved, absolutely loved and appreciated, and it's vaguely lost on me. But what a wonderful way to end our 3 hours together, and it has been a great show that I've very much enjoyed. My thanks to Andy Brassel for his insight and his company. My thanks to all of you for listening. It is always appreciated and never taken for granted. Now, our poll, we asked you who is Italy's best player, and the winner of the poll, Sandro Tonali, 40% of your votes in that one. Gigio Donnarumma got 31% of the votes. Nicolo Barella got 15%. And Alessandro Bastoni, who made that pretty bad mistake and got himself sent off in midweek, got 14%. So I'm delighted to know that the niche choice is the one that I would have gone for.
Yeah, I was voting for Tonali, but only because I didn't want to get egged by the neighbours.
Well, exactly. You being in Newcastle, you have to be very, very careful indeed. Thanks to all the listeners. It's been great fun on Trans Europe Express. Coming up after us, we're going to have an episode of How to Win the World Cup. That's it for this week on Trans Europe Express.
Yeah, I know, Ali, I got in trouble with you and Cass yesterday because you accused me of basically coming in and causing absolute chaos with the Marc Cucurella and Chelsea story. So I've got another one for you today.